Good evening. This is the Lake Bluff District 65 Board of Education regular meeting, March 19th, 2013. Could we have a roll call?
Mary Jane Brady.
Present.
Terry Carney.
Present.
Al Pfeifhouse. Present. Eric Wagner.
Present.
Leanne Charlot.
Present.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Susan Ryder.
Present.
Okay. First, we have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So Ian's going to take over. Okay. So our first report this evening is a fourth grade report.
Yes, I'm happy to introduce. We have two fourth grade teachers here and our technology curriculum specialist, Lori Brown, seated at the computer. And we have Jan Ramito and Kathy Kushenpour will give you a brief introduction to what our students are going to share with us.
Thank you.
Our fourth graders were placed into realistic fiction reading groups, and within each group they were supposed to be studying theme and story elements. So the projects that they're going to present are going to be based on those story elements and the theme of the story.
Great. And will they be introducing themselves?
Yes.
Great.
Hi, my name is Margaret. Each fourth grader was assigned a realistic fiction book to read with a group. After reading the book, we all took a short test to determine our strongest intelligence of 8 intelligences recognized by Howard Gardner. We then created a presentation using a computer or iPad applications as an element of the story: setting, characters, events, problem, solution, and theme. Here are some presentations we created. My intelligence is musical. I read the book Bloomability by Sharon Creech and did my project on the setting of the book. I used GarageBand to record my voice and added pictures to match the setting.
We'll start over again so you can hear it.
It's awesome. And in the spring, those flowers there.
Let's try it again. You can hear it.
Hello, this is Margaret Jemian, reporting live from Switzerland. I'm on the ABC7 News team on a special mission. Things we've discovered on this mission are skiers. They go racing down the hills. It's amazing, right? And you can take pictures wherever you want. Snap, snap, snap. It's awesome. And in the spring, those flowers, they are blooming. It's beautiful. And our main character, Denny, goes to this awesome school. It's a really good school. All right. So, this is Margaret Jemmy, reporter. Over and out. Goodbye.
Excellent.
Hi, my name is Josh Daly, and my intelligence is visual. I read the book Bloomability by Sharon Creech and did my project on the events of the book. I'm going to share one of the events. I used the program called Pages to write newspaper articles about the events. Precurso opens in Lugano. A new Precurso opened in Lugano recently. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's like a trail that you have to run. And about every quarter mile, you make a stop because there is a sign that says an activity. You do that activity with the equipment provided. Maybe a sign will say, complete the ladder 3 times if you are a beginner, 7 times if you are intermediate, and 10 times if you are advanced. I even included some ads. The Percorso is absolutely free. You can even call to find a day to reserve the Percorso. Call 1-800-PERCURSO or go to luganopercorso.net.
Hi, my name is Mickey Boveri, and my intelligence is body smart. I read the book A Taste of Blackberries by Doris Buchanan Smith and did my project on the problem and solution of the book. I used GarageBand to record my voice and took pictures to show the problem and solution.
Hello, my name is Nikki, and I'm an artist of blackberries. In the book, I'm in a blackberry field with my best friend, Jamie. When we are done picking blackberries, we go home to Jamie's house. He has a little sister, and his mom said that we should take her outside, so we do. And she wonders where our school was, so we walked toward our school. Suddenly, a thunderstorm went on. Jamie put his thumb out and hit her car. I didn't know what Jamie was doing at the moment, but I got home safely, and so did Jamie. The next day, I went outside and I saw Jamie. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Hauser, asked me if I wanted to help her with her garden. So I said yes, and Jamie got some friends over. So while we were working, Jamie found a stick, and of course Jamie didn't want to work. So he was poking the ground, not knowing that there was a bee hole underneath us. And then, suddenly, the ground rumbled. It shook like a hurricane. Bees came out. They were going all over the place. It was crazy. Then, Jamie just fell down. I thought the boy was just trying to get a cheap laugh or something. But he wasn't, because the next second you knew, an ambulance came. And Jamie was carried away in the ambulance. The next day, my mom told me that Jamie was dead. That was a shock. I mean, imagine if your best friend died. How did he even die? I wondered until I went to his funeral. Someone said that Jamie was a good man and he died because he was allergic to bees. Wow. Did he know that or did he not? I don't think that his parents knew that, because if they did, they would keep Jamie away from the bees. When the funeral was over, my parents took me home, and I went straight up to my room. I couldn't stop thinking about Jamie. I mean, he died because he got stung by 2 bees. A couple hours later, it was nighttime, and my parents told me to go to bed. So I did, and the next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about Jamie again. So I thought what he loved the most, blackberries. And I knew how sad his mom would be, because her son's dead now. You know, imagine that. If you're a parent and your kid dies, or best friend dies, or someone that you know dies, that's really sad. So I went over to the blackberry field, and I picked a lot of blackberries. And then I went back home, and I saw some kids playing. And I thought, well, when I'm done with this, I guess I could play. So I gave the blackberries that I picked to Jamie's mom, and then she told me, go play with the other kids. So I felt good about myself, and I thought, wherever I am, Jamie is there.
Hi, my name is Sydney Wing, and my intelligence is naturalistic. I read the book Bloomability by Sharon Creech and did my project on the setting of the book. I used Dosery on the iPad to draw pictures of the different settings in the book. This is what the land looks like when Denny looks down. This is the persimmon trees by the sidewalk. This is St. Moritz, which is a mountain in the autumn. This is a creek in the autumn. And this is St. Moritz in the winter. This is an avalanche at St. Moritz. And this is a creek in the spring.
Hi, my name is Lily Kate Carr, and my intelligence is interpersonal. I read the book A Week in the Woods by Andrew Clements and did my project on the characters and setting of the book. I used iDiary on the iPad to write a journal and find pictures that showed the setting from the book. Dear Diary, today is my first day in A Week in the Woods. I have already unpacked and everything. Jason brought a Swiss Army knife, Mr. Maxwell caught me holding it, and I had to go home. I was supposed to go in the car, but I went into the woods instead, and I got to camp in the woods by myself. It was kind of fun, but it was really cold and scary, especially at night. But in the end, I realized Mr. Maxwell isn't that bad after all.
Hi, my name is Finn Martin, and my intelligence is body smart. I read the book A Boy and a Girl's Bathroom by Louis Achar and did my project on the characters in the book. I used Strip Designer on the iPad to take pictures of tableaus showing different events in the story. That's Bradley's present to Colleen, a replica of a human heart. That's Bradley in his classroom with all his classmates. This is Bradley when he got an F on his test and he's happy about it. This is Bradley going into the girls' bathroom and the girls screaming. At the end of each project, each book group got together and put all of their story element information together. That's called synthesis. This is an example of how we use synthesis to explain the theme of our story. After reading the book, we learned to believe in ourselves. The characters helped Bradley to believe in himself, even when times were hard. Bradley kept going and learned how to believe in himself.
No, and that's it. If you have any questions for them, feel free to ask.
Wow, those are really incredible projects, and thank you guys for being here tonight. Do any of the board members have any questions?
How long did it take you guys to put all that together? Go ahead.
For me, it was about... For me, it was about, say, 3 to 4 days.
It's fast. Good.
For me, it was about 2 to 3.
Ooh, competition.
Mine took about 5 days to make because I had to do a rough draft and then put it on Dosery and then transform it into a slideshow.
Mine took like a week because I needed to like put it on like the strip designer, which took a while because I needed to like take a picture and then I needed to like think of words to put on the picture.
Mine took 4 or 5 days because I needed to change the format of the paper I was using.
Mine took about 2 to 3 days because I had to record my voice and then add pictures.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I have one more question about the Bloomability project. What was the app that you used?
Which one?
I used Dosery.
Okay, and could I ask one more question? It looked like those pictures were drawn. Do you actually draw the picture with your finger on the iPad?
Yes.
Oh, I need to get one of those. Thank you, everyone. Any other questions? Wow, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all of your parents bringing you here this evening, and I think they want a quick picture before you go home tonight. So we're going to get that done. Thank you to our wonderful teachers who helped the kids set up their projects. Do we have the best kids in Lake Bluff ever? So I did promise your parents, though, if you could kind of come stand up this way and face your parents, they would like a picture of you. So come on up this way and stand maybe right here and then turn around. Because I did promise your parents they could get a picture. I can't thank all of you enough, and make sure you thank your parents for bringing them here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
Yeah, just wonder when parent-teacher meetings were removed. Mrs. Romito, when we first moved here. Really? Good teacher.
Have a nice evening, everyone, and have a great spring break.
Great presentations. Thank you so much. Great presentations.
Yeah, they did a great job.
They really did.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good 21st century skills there too, right?
Lots of 21st century skills.
I like the use of the word synthesis. It's good.
Okay, let's move on to principal reports.
Mr. Blackmer.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. So I'll keep things brief. The ISAT testing at the middle school has completed. We're done with another year. I wanted to thank all of our families and our students. I know that they worked around those orthodontic appointments and doctor's appointments, and our attendance was among the best we've had in recent memory. Very few makeups that we needed to take care of. I know the students took it very seriously, and I was really pleased by the way that process went. We're moving on now to musical season. The musical is well underway. Preparations are happening in all parts of the building, and so I did just want to make sure that Cinderella is coming to Lake Bluff, and that is going to be April 19th and 20th. Tickets are on sale. It's also worth mentioning, not only is the musical something that includes a large number of students on stage, there's equally as many, if not more, behind the scenes and off stage, working to put it together, whether it be hair and makeup, light and sound, costume design, set design. We've got everybody putting in a lot of long hours right now, and I think it's something that's really a valuable part of Lake Bluff Middle School, so I wanted to make sure to mention that.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackmer. Mrs. Overman is not able to be here this evening, so we'll move right on to the next report.
Okay, so could we have a report from PTO? We have Kate Amaral here.
Hello. So this is a report for February and March, so I apologize, it's a little long. We have concluded our Books for All effort. This was an effort to try and get books into the hands of all of our children. In kindergarten, we purchased books from plant to seed for every student. In first grade, they got the Wampanoag book. In second grade, they chose Life Cycles, Ocean. Third grade, they picked a book on space. And in fourth grade, did A Dinosaur Drink This Water? Fifth grade chose Explorers of North America. And the fourth and fifth multi-age picked a set of Rebecca Caudill award books that are for the classroom, so all the kids will rotate through them. And then sixth through eighth, we left into the capable hands of Mallory Smith. The LBES PTO donated 4,000 scholastic dollars to LBMS to be able to either choose Common Core books or beef up the library. So she's working on that. Overall, we spent a little over $3,000 on this project. In February, we had 2 PTO family science nights. LBS was on the 21st and LBMS was on the 27th. For those who weren't there, we had 6 stations for students and parents to rotate through. One was DNA isolation. The other one was animal cell model building that they could take home. I'm not sure some parents knew what to do with those things after they made them, but the other station was sound and optics. Another one was chemistry, which focused on pH, measuring pH. Another was Archimedes' law, whether things sink or float. And then we also had some fossils and other specimens for people to examine. A big thank you to our coordinator and biology professor, Lynette Foss. And I also want to thank our scientists, Dom Duelli and Michelle Hastings from Rosalind Franklin, Jim Sullivan from Lake Forest High School, Nate Blackmer from LVMS, Pete Croonan, a high school physics teacher, and our volunteers, Emily McBain, Jana Nugent, Ann Stewart, Emily Lane, and Rebecca Bailey. We're already working on making next year's bigger and better. February conferences, we usually provide some sort of teacher appreciation meal. At LBS, we provided dinner from Francesca's, and at LBMS, we provided Jimmy John's for lunch. Last month, also, the Lake Bluff PTO voted to donate $500 to the Community Wellness Task Force to support their mission, and also to support the consultation fee of Dr. Mike Reineke, and have it go towards the costs associated with the new text tip hotline that should launch next fall. Lake Bluff PTO also voted to contribute $4,000 to the speaking fee of Rosalind Wiseman for our district, hopefully next fall. And this was already supported by the Alliance for Excellence as well. For enrichment, we have recently had our Wheel of Wisdom, March 13th at LBES and March 15th at LBMS. This is a great program where they pull questions from the curriculum the week before and create a game show for the kids to sort of a quiz show. And then at the end, the teachers get up there and compete as well. So it was very entertaining. Our last program is Matt Wilhelm is coming to the elementary school on April 16th to discuss bike safety. He's a ex-game biker. We're also working to bring Ty Sells to the middle school. He was a speaker involved with the 8th grade youth summit. He'll be coming on May 9th to do a parent presentation to the entire community. And then on May 10th, it will be an all-school assembly at the middle school. And then he'll also have lunch and learns. This coincides with the Depression Awareness Week, so it's tied into a bunch of activities that are happening all over our community and within the middle school. In February, LBS held their Valentine's Day parties. This year, Shelley had the teachers choose whatever time they would like to have their parties, and this was really well received. The parents were pleased to be able to come in, especially if they had multiple classrooms to attend. They could make all the parties. The parking wasn't so bad. Getting people through security was a lot better, so I think that works really well. On March 13th, Kim Burke held a welcome coffee for our incoming kindergarten parents. And then on April 25th is our 5th grade mother-daughter night. At middle school, they're currently beginning planning on graduation. And we were very pleased to be able to donate 2 SUVs full of books that were removed from the LBMS library to the Newport Elementary School in Beach Park, and they were very appreciative. We've also had a number of parents who have donated from their personal collections as well to that school. And we're also currently looking to fill our slate for next year and working on next year's planning and budgets. Our next meeting is tomorrow, March 20th at 9:30 a.m. in the Public Safety Building. Phew, that's it. Any questions?
I have a quick one, Kate.
Yeah.
If you could do me a favor and email me the names of all the people that helped out with the science nights,
Sure.
I'd like to just send them a thank you email.
Okay.
So,
Will
I
do.
think I forgot to handwrite, but I'll email them something. So.
Okay. I already sent him a handwritten letter, so it's okay. Okay.
Thanks, Kate. Okay, our superintendent's report.
My report will be short because I'm going to turn it over to Leanne, who's going to talk a little bit about our school board spring dinner last week. I did want to comment, it's very exciting to me to both attend the kindergarten coffee last week. The majority of the parents I spoke with, this is their first child entering the school system, And the excitement and the fear and the nervousness and the happiness was all there. It was just very, very exciting for me to see that. Great turnout, and it was very nice of our PTO to host that. I wish they would have had that when my kids were in school. The other thing I wanted to share is that I did attend the Wheel of Wisdom, another PTO-sponsored event. It was very exciting. I had never seen anything like that, and the kids really, really seemed to get into it. So between the PTO and the Alliance, and I met last week with Speak Up and LEAD organizations, I'm continually wowed by the support of the kids in this community. I think we're all very lucky. So with that, I'm going to turn over the rest of my superintendent report to Leanne to talk about our dinner we attended last week.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a nice time at the Illinois Association of School Boards Lake Division dinner. It's important for us to have someone there just to sort of fulfill obligations that we have for sort of continuing education for school board, I suppose you would call it. We had an opportunity to tour the middle school, part of the middle school, and we're very impressed with the facilities at that school, so appreciated being able to see it. They had students presenting in their library, and it was exciting to me to see, their library is really built, so kids can really engage with one another in the group projects and in doing presentations, and it's set up so that their technology kind of gets integrated into what they're doing pretty seamlessly. But I was very impressed with some kids that were in there showing us what they were doing, and so they each had their own technology in front of them, but then there was also a group screen where they could show what they were doing to other students, and I really have to say I was very impressed with how they were able to, I do a drawing in this program and then I bring in the data from over here. It was just really a neat experience. So, who knows, in the future, perhaps our library will offer some similar facilities for kids. And then we also had a nice opportunity to hear a speaker talking about communications, and found that, that presented some helpful ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to implement some of those here as well.
Great. Is that it?
That's our report.
Okay. President's report. I have a couple of items to cover. The first is to draw attention to the board meeting that we have scheduled for this Thursday. At that meeting, the board will vote on a contract extension for Dr. Jean Sophie, amending her contract expiration date from June 30th, 2015 to June 30th, 2016. The board completed its evaluation of Dr. Sophie's performance during January and February of this year. Dr. Sophie was evaluated across a wide range of administrative standards, including, but not limited to, student performance, finance, communication, community outreach, teacher evaluation, and professional development. Jean has successfully completed her contract goals for this year, and therefore this amendment to her contract includes new goals as well as the one-year extension. Based upon the advice of legal counsel, we posted Dr. Sophie's contract on the district website last year for 6 days prior to voting on the acceptance of her contract and her official hire. Once again, on the advice of counsel, we have posted Dr. Sophie's contract amendment for 6 days prior to our vote this Thursday. So that's the reason that we aren't voting tonight. Her contract has been posted on our website and is there, and we will be voting on that contract Thursday evening, and our meeting is here.
Correct. Great.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about is our strategic plan, and at the risk of repeating myself, I'm going to repeat myself a little bit. Not quite as much as last week, because I'm sure everybody did tune in for my discussion of our strategic planning process, and I don't want to go too much over that. But this evening there will be further discussion and continued work on our strategic plan. Once again, we have Gina with us from ECRA if we need her for some questions or some further clarification. For those members in our viewing audience, I'll share a reminder sort of the nature and process of this endeavor, which has been very important, and the board has been very pleased with the progress we've made to date. In order to continue improving the quality of education and services provided by District 65, and with profound sense of commitment to our district, the Board of Education has partnered with ECRA Group to develop a strategic plan to document the current state of our district and determine a direction for the future. During phase 1 of this process, ECRA provided the outreach to our community to gain their insights and thoughts about the state of our district and to provide us with a framework for our decision-making going forward. ECRA interviewed approximately 200 District 65 participants in 23 focus groups and collected feedback from 521 participants via survey. Based on that input, the board is now in the midst of finishing up the creation of our mission, vision, values, strategic goals, and objectives that will chart a course for the future. This is phase 2. Following phase 2, the administration and outside consultants, other experts, perhaps some community members will begin phase 3, which is the actual action planning part of our strategic plan. Throughout the process, we have asked for and have received communications from our community about the status of our plan. Community members have offered us suggestions, both here in meetings and by meetings and with Dr. Sophie and in emails, and we appreciate all that input. We are continuing to use that input and have taken that input into account in the previous documents that we've used as drafts for the strategic plan and to where we come tonight. So I don't really have anything else to add to that. If there are some communications or questions or comments tonight from visitors, we will take those both before and after the board conducts its discussion of the strategic plan we have before us tonight. Thank you. Okay, so we are at communications and questions from visitors. Does anyone have a comment or question for the board? There being none, we will move on to discussion, and that is discussion of our strategic plan. So
I would open up with, I've sent a couple emails this week sharing that based upon feedback from last week, we may want to take a look at the goals and possibly add an objective to move us forward with recruiting and retaining quality staff. Because that was loud and clear in several of the emails. I also shared with you that under Board Goal 3, the fiscal management might need to be a little bit better defined in order for us to move forward with action teams. Keeping in mind that the objectives are really going to be better defined and worked on in phase 3.
okay, so as for tonight, is our intention to go back through the strategic plan items that we have currently before us and tweak any of those? Is that what everybody feels like would be the best method for that? Okay. So we will start with, Gina, do you have anything that you want to say to us before we start? You're just... Great,
Our resource, and then we'll have to move the mic if we ask her questions.
Okay. All right, so...
Maybe just start with the mission.
Right, and I'm just pulling mine up. Okay?
I can start.
Okay.
I can start before that, actually.
Okay.
Sorry. On page 9, under item 4, curriculum and instruction, this was revised since we got the last one. And my comment is similar to the issue we had with the big bullet on fiscal issues before. There's currently, the first sentence reads, employee and parent respondents are pleased with the quality of the district's curriculum and instruction, with room for improvement in community member ratings of the very same survey items. I think the choice of the words, room for improvement with community member ratings, will possibly make some people upset, and it doesn't accurately reflect the intention. I think a better wording would be, over 80% of employee and parent respondents are pleased with the quality of the district's curriculum and instruction, while only about half of the community members are pleased with the same survey items. I don't want our text to imply that the problem was with the ratings as opposed to people's opinions of what's really going on. And I think that's similar to the issue we had last week.
If that's agreed upon, then Liz and I are both going to be typing this. So you're going to read it real slow. Okay, page 9, I've got it.
Page 9, over 80%, I'm winging this, over 80% of employee and parent respondents are pleased with the quality.
Hold on, parent respondents are pleased with the
quality of the district's curriculum and instruction, while only about half of the community members.
Respondents.
Community respondents.
Community respondents, right?
Right.
Okay, I was just using the same words as already in here. Are pleased with the same survey results, same survey items, sorry.
Mark, I think it might be a little bit more accurate to say close to 90%.
Well, if you look at parents and
employee respondents.
Right, the employees were high, they were the 90s, but weren't the parents only in the 82, 83 range, I think?
Okay.
So I just covered it by saying.
Is what's in the margin there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And that was just in place of the very first sentence in that
Right.
item number 4.
Got it.
Okay, Mark, did you have anything else before we get to mission? Anybody else?
That's the only thing that we really changed.
Jean does?
I have a quick question. Gina, logistically, is this something, if I get this all down and email it to you, somebody can insert this in? Okay, all right. All right, sorry.
Great, so we're heading to mission statement.
Sure.
Okay. So, our mission statement, as it's currently printed, is to provide a premier educational foundation that enables each student to thrive. But we did have some comments on that, to perhaps,
Talk through.
increase the power of the statement. And anybody have any thoughts on that?
I thought that the suggestion we're talking about kind of was already encompassed in the words thrive. I thought it was legitimate ideas. I just thought we've kind of already captured that in a more concise way. My thoughts were about the word, I thought we didn't like the word enables. I seem to recall a conversation at some point where we didn't like that word. So I wondered about empowers. Maybe we didn't have that
I
conversation.
don't know if you can empower to thrive. I think you'd enable to thrive.
Right. I think so.
Just thought there was some connotation with enable that we didn't like, but okay.
I looked at this again and thought, why are we saying educational foundation? Why don't we just say education?
I think we talked about the fact that we use the word foundation because we're the first school,
Okay.
situation these kids experience, and then really to create a foundation for their future learning beyond the, 65, to go to high school,
I think that's how we
college.
kind of got the lifelong learner thing taken care of, that we wanted it to be.
So far, no changes, right?
Okay, so we good with mission? Yes. Okay, check. All right, vision statement. Developing skills and confidence to pursue dreams. Any comments? Al?
Not that I can get into words yet.
I mean, it doesn't limit you to what you want to be. It's just, whatever you dream you want to do.
It's big.
Leanne? Susan?
I think both the mission and the vision have the nub of what we're trying to communicate without trying to embellish. That's sort of why I like them both. They say a lot in a very few words and leave out nothing by the fact that they say it so briefly.
They're both quite powerful.
Yeah.
Very aspirational,
They
yeah.
neither embellish nor constrict.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Very good point.
So while there's lots more we could say in either of them, when I start adding things, it takes away from, right. So I'm satisfied with both of them.
I feel the same way. Others?
To your point, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, you said something, the more you try to add in little details, the more you realize you're excluding things by doing
Right,
that.
it limits
The
it.
more you leave out, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yep, the details come next.
Because as you look at it, you keep thinking, but we could say,
Yeah.
oh, but we could say, and so resisting
on
the
forever.
urge.
Yeah, that-
Resisting,
And I think it also bears repeating that this is a vision statement that everyone can remember
Right.
and can roll off the tongue. And that's the kind of vision statement that the district needs.
Right. Well, and I think it goes also to what we've been talking about individualized and differentiated. Everybody's dreams are different, and this takes that into account.
I think we need to have
Every parent's dreams are different for their kids.
I think we need to have a T-shirt contest.
I'm
to
not
design
kidding
a
about
long-
that T-shirt.
Our fourth graders could start with some of their
Right.
technology.
Right. You know that one where they do that color?
Everybody away.
there is.
Yeah, there's an app, T-shirt creator.
This.
Yeah.
There is one,
Okay,
sure.
so we're good with vision, right? Yep. Okay. Then let's move on to guiding principles.
You know, excuse me, I have my comments on the next one. I'm skipping
Next
over.
section? Or
Yeah.
the-
So I'm good.
Okay, so let's go to guiding principles. We are on page 16.
Under the we believe.
Right.
It's a good page.
Okay? Why don't I just read through them one at a time, and let's be sure they all sound okay?
Right.
Unless somebody else wants to read them. We believe the best interests of students must guide every decision.
Yes.
Okay? We believe education is a partnership involving parents, students, school staff, and the community. Okay? I'll presume we're okay unless somebody speaks up. Terry, I know you will.
There's a comma we don't need in that sentence, but
There's a
otherwise I'm
comma we
good.
don't
It's
need
the
that.
Oxford comma, I think, is what it's referred to.
Okay? We believe social and emotional wellness is integral to the learning process.
Check.
We believe fine arts are fundamental to an exceptional educational experience.
Yes.
We believe our facilities and technologies must enhance the educational process.
I only question if technologies should be plural there, but
Oh,
I don't know what the proper.
Debate that all night.
Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah, I really think because of all the different technologies we have,
Okay.
it sends a different message saying ease rather than or singular.
All right.
okay, so we're good with that?
Yes.
We believe students learn best when they are actively engaged and individually challenged to achieve their unique potentials. I think we worked a long time on that one, and I think we feel good about that one.
Yeah.
Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We believe excellence in teaching promotes excellence in learning.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We believe fiscal discipline strengthens our schools and community.
Yep.
That's good. Boy,
We,
did
we
good.
believe effective and transparent communication with all stakeholders is essential for the district's success.
Yes.
We believe continuous improvement requires data-driven evaluation and decision-making. Okay.
That's good.
Have we covered them?
It's funny, there's hours of work back there, and now, isn't it exciting to look at them and think,
And I
yeah, we
read
got
them, and
this
it,
right?
I read them, and it is exciting
I know
to
it
hear them.
is.
Yeah.
It really
I think it's
is.
days. It's
Well, right.
really days with all the background that went into these. It's a
When you
lot of
consider
time.
all of the focus groups work that went into it. I guess when I was
Surveys
saying
and-
hours, I was just thinking about this group, but you're right.
Well, when we're all finished, we can go to the mic like the fourth graders did, and we can say how long this took us.
Because I had to write them and rewrite them and write them again.
And I had to take some data and transform it on from one paper to the, but,
That happened a few times.
okay, so we're good with guiding principles, correct?
Right.
Okay, and now we're going to move to goals and objectives. Shall we take a goal and its objectives one at a time?
Oh, you
Can
want
I
to
make
do
a
the,
general comment about page 17? Because we got a comment back that we should keep titles for each of the goal, and it seems like we did that.
You
We
did.
have like a basic summary statement for each of the goals in this document, so.
they're
I just
talking
wanted
about
to-
one word because previous plans had one, like business, personnel, achievement.
Numbering the goals.
I had made the argument for that, and I still stand by that argument, but, you know, if I can't convince anybody else. I just thought, and I thought the community member who made that argument as well, supported it pretty well. I think it simplifies the job down the road, so that when we have groups of people set up to expand on our objectives and to develop plans to meet these objectives, having a simple strategic goal captured in a couple of words, I think it makes it easier to realize what goes into that bucket. We would call them bucket names, but if people don't buy into that logic, you're lost.
Make this our bucket list.
So the titles that were suggested were academic achievement and personal growth for number 1, teaching environment for number 2, fiscal stability for number 3, and communication and collaboration for number 4.
So all those words are in these titles, just a few more, and so it seems to me it's just overly redundant to do that.
I agree with Terry.
I agree too.
So if we called them that, then we'd essentially collapse what are currently 2 statements into one. We'd have just the title that you suggested, and then rather than have it stated again and then stated a second time in the sub-goal, I'd say we collapse those, the 2 that appear now.
Merge the remaining 2 sentences.
Right, but I guess I don't have a strong feeling one way or another, but I just don't think we should say it 3 times. I think we can say it twice,
I strongly
but not
agree
3
with
times.
that. Yeah.
I think there is a potential for confusion between goals 1 and 2, where goal 1 really relates to, in my mind, to the academic achievement and personal growth of the students, and number 2, actually the way we have worded that first sentence now, optimize the teaching and learning environment, I think works better. I think it was worded differently before and wasn't very clear. So I'm okay.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I would hate to give up any of the words we have here, though, because I think either of these statements or making it more parsimonious takes away some of the meaning. I wouldn't understand anything less than what we have here, what the goal was.
What's good about the way it's written now, it puts an action verb in front of something, right? So it's just a student achievement. What about it? Well, it's about maximizing student achievement. That's the important part of it. It's not about the...
And the descriptor, does a good job of explaining how we do that. What does the goal actually mean?
Right.
I suspect we'll end up referring to this one as the student achievement goal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I guess I'm content with the way it is.
I like your action verb thing. That's a good point. I like that.
Al, any comments?
I could take the numbers or leave them, but I do like the statements that we have with the action verb in the front. I think that's important.
Good. Okay, I think then we are good with the goals and the goal descriptor that's written underneath. Okay, so now we will move on to the objectives for each goal. The first goal is maximize the academic achievement and personal growth of each student.
Can you just make a statement again that you mentioned earlier about these are what we have today, but they're not necessarily cast in concrete? It's really going to come back to the teams in phase 3 to further refine and contract, expand, change this a little bit. I mean, this isn't, so we want to try to get a good starting point, but we don't necessarily say this is the end point either. I mean, that's up to the phase 3 teams to do that.
Terry does make a good point. When we vote on this portion of our strategic plan, we will be voting on the mission, the vision, the
guiding
principles, and
the strategic goals.
And the goals. These objectives are general, what we presume will shake out as most of the objectives, but they are considered a rough draft at this point, or maybe not a rough draft, but a draft
and maybe
of those guiding.
I think
of those objectives.
One of the things Gina had mentioned to us is this gives us, as the administrators, as we start looking at how we're going to implement this, gives us an idea of where you really wanted to see monitoring and results. But this may be something that comes back to you that we say we really didn't understand what you meant by this. So it really is, they're guidelines for us as we move forward. And as we talked about at the last meeting, as we move into phase 3, we'll be presenting a report and we'll be bringing back to you, these are the objectives we have now and these are the metrics we're thinking about, and this is when we would report out to you on this.
I guess a question that I have looking at this is, is there anything else we need to do that will communicate that we want some measurable results to take place in academic achievement, for example? And there was something mentioned in the report about achievement in 7th grade math not being as expected. So I would like to see something as specific as that appear as one of our goals. And I think all of this looks good, but I want to know where that gets done. So if you're, let's say a group, you appoint a group or a group gets put together to look at this, they may work for, I don't know, a month or 3 months or whatever, and then come back and nothing like that is there. How does this get implemented so that we're sure we're going to get back some really
That's where
measurable?
I can guarantee you that will be on.
Okay, good.
But let's say something else comes up that we haven't discussed here. And we've talked through, and it's something that we can manage, and it's measurable. You're not going to know till we bring things to you and say, this is what we put together. And we kind of bounce back ideas, because it goes back to the administration and different committee members, possibly community members, possibly parents, to really make sure that we can implement what's here. So as I had said in the board goal 3, they have to be defined enough that we understand what you're trying to get to. And the administrative team has looked at these, and all of these have meaning to us, with the exception of the couple emails that I've sent to you this week, things to think about.
So for example, just taking as an example, number 1 about monitor, assess, and improve individual student growth, then it's your job to carry back to whatever work group is working on this, the kind of results that we're looking for. Okay, and you're clear about what?
Does the board approve their plan, that plan that comes forth from that group?
In my plans, they always have. But then they also kind of approve the monitoring, like, we'll report out on this in January and June. But then in June, if we look at it and say, you know, we didn't get what we needed from this, or this really wasn't that meaningful, but instead we'd like to see this, it would be kind of a group decision. I would bring it to the team. I'm thinking of a certain, for instance, with interventions. My previous board was very interested in the intervention money that we spent, making sure those interventions were meaningful. So we put that under the strategic goal that was under student achievement, and we added that the second year in the strategic plan, because that's something that they really wanted to see, because we were spending money and they wanted to see that the money was being used in the proper manner. So we will present what's meaningful for us as educators, and certainly if it's not on that list, we have a discussion. Gina, that's my experiences with strategic planning.
It's probably the most common.
And I'm assuming some of these, there'll be an expense involved in the monitoring and reporting.
Sometimes.
For it. So that aspect of it will probably come back here too, correct? Okay.
And the other thing is, it's important to note this, is that when you look at a strategic plan like this, and let's just say 3 years, some of these things will start in year 1, some of the things will start in year 2, and by the end of year 3, this many items need to have been started. And then periodically, you're always updating and monitoring that. For instance, we'll come up with something on this, and then Park will come, the new state testing, and we may have to change part of that objective. So Illinois may change state funding again. How will that impact us? That might impact those objectives. So it's a fluid document. It needs to be a living document that we conduct our operations around, but that you can monitor as a board the progress.
So just to further amplify on that, I mean, I mentioned to you in an email regarding this Rise and Star Continuous Improvement Plan, where we are making a lot of commitments, right? That clearly has to be integrated in these objectives across a couple goals, I suspect. So it's important that we don't lose sight of it, because it's an independent thing that we are committing the district to do. Other community members have referenced prior strategic plans where they thought some really good work was done. I think what the board is probably asking is to ensure that all these pieces of information and commitments that are made and things that are valid and relevant to people get assimilated into this stuff, and they have an assurance that things don't fall by the wayside, you know. So that's, I think, this is the process they're sort of asking for. is because it's not whether these 7 are the right things, it's that there's a lot of things out there. And how do we make sure that all these commitments we're making, whether it's previous strategic plans that are still relevant or these other state filings that we're making, are all integrated and addressed in the appropriate time frame and the right resources and so forth. And I think that's what I would guess is, because 7 objectives isn't what the end answer is. It's going to be pages of stuff, I'm confident of that.
Absolutely.
So, but, you know, to make sure that not everybody has a great memory all the time, so it's a question of making sure that somebody is held accountable to just make sure all that stuff is assimilated.
What about putting guidance, like we did with some of these already, in the footnotes, that kind of stuff, to make sure that we include at least an assessment of prior work done on committees, whatever was done, the 21st century learning and the.
I was going to say that same thing, Mark. I presume as these committees form and as action groups form, hopefully the first order of business is to say, where have we been? I think we've had some suggestions from folks in the community. I was a part of something in the past, and some good work has been done. I presume we're not going to reinvent the wheel, and I also presume the same thing. I think we have some places where we can start, other places we're starting new, but I think in the places where we have already some good history. Yeah, let's start, and like I said, I presume as groups form, they're going to take a look at where are we now, what have we done, what do we have that we could start with, what can we keep, what can we build on, so.
And really, what is important for me is that as we move forward, now that the mission, vision, and guiding principles and goals are set, is that it's a breathing, living document they're all working together on. So we may work together as an administrative team with parents and community members, but we're reporting back to you and you're saying, gee, you know, I'm hearing this, how could you incorporate that in? Terry brought up a really good question with the Rising Star that you're going to be voting on tonight. That, to me, anytime a school does not make AYP in an area, that automatically has to be fit in the strategic planning because we have to monitor it. And that will align with starting both school improvement teams next year as well as our district improvement team. So a lot of this falls in line with our daily operations, but now you're going to have a way to monitor that. We're going to have that on our board calendar. I remember how I kept referencing this is going to come back to the board calendar. Right. So every month you're going to say, okay, we're hearing about that this month. And every year we'll look at the board calendar and say, I need to hear about this report earlier, or maybe this one's not so important, maybe this one's a little bit more important.
I think it's so important that we're able to do that and do it at these board meetings because that's a way of not only continually reminding us and ensuring that feedback loop persists, but it's also re-engaging the community every month as we have public here at the meetings and they can see the progress continuing as it's also reported on the website and so forth.
It has to be that continuous engagement. It has to be reaching out to our families, our community members, to you, to our administrators, our teachers. They need to be an active part in this. So it's a continuous feedback loop. And I would just share, as I stated in the last meeting, I'm hoping as we move forward we can engage with ECRA again in phase 3 because I think we'll all need that guidance to do a superb job.
So one final suggestion on this, and it comes back to the way the research findings are put together, where they reference where this information came from. So maybe the instruction to these teams going forward is that as you fine-tune the objectives, add, delete, whatever you do to them, you know, where'd you get the input from? You know, did you get it from this strategic plan? Did you get it from prior strategic plan? Did you get it from the Rising Star Continuous Improvement Plan? Just so that the board has, you know, a knowledge of, okay, where is this coming from? And so there is a reference, a base, you know, to anchor it to. So it just doesn't look like it's always new. You have a reference. You don't, okay, it's not new work. It's something that we did before and we want to bring it forward. It's still relevant.
So you're really looking at more as a reference page.
No, I'm just saying that as they come forward, you know, so let's say this changes. Whoever has this one goal, the 7 objectives, and they come back with 15 or 20, and then the board's going to facilitate the board's understanding about why it went from 7 to 20. Well, we put 3 or 4 from last year's strategic plan, or 5-year growth strategic plan, or 21st century growth. We took a couple from the that were commitments we made in the Rising Star thing, just so that you know, so we don't you have to spend a lot of time arguing, discussing about the evolution of this stuff, you know?
So it's more documentation
Just
of our
facilitate this
proceedings.
discussion so people have a, okay, I
And Terry,
get it.
you raise a good point, and particularly if we're going to change objectives or if we add or delete. Remember, these objectives were driven by the data that was collected. These rose to the top from the data. So if we're going to make significant changes to these, we need to understand why we made those, because the data we collected from 521 participants, you know, told us that these were the things that they were interested in, and that was important. So if someone wants to make a significant change to these, I think we need to understand why.
Well, and it seems more likely that not necessarily it would be changed, but it would be, you know, it would become, it would be enhanced, and become more specific. So where did that come from? How did you decide to, you know?
Explode it out this way, you know? Yeah.
So as our final commitment to this phase of this document, do we need to provide a guidance document to who inherits the next phase? What we expect to become of that next phase?
Isn't that the superintendent contract?
That would be the superintendent's job. Because phase 3 is turned over to me and then committees. But again, I said I wanted to wait till the next board came in to kind of give me some directive and guidance with that. It's a good question.
And that's a living document.
Yes.
The superintendent guiding document.
Otherwise, I won't be living.
And eventually, it's tied to the superintendent's goals also.
Evaluation. Right.
And then I would assume shows up in the principal and staff goals, you know, so it's all tied.
Integrated.
And my goal, as I said before, because we had this discussion, my goal would be that we can get into phase 3 and get you something by August. Because I think I know the new board members will be anxious to take a look at that, and those of you that have been part of this process, that's a key part. So
And
my
you
goal
went-
would be to get that to you.
Yeah, and you went exactly what I was gonna ask next is, not just when and in a fuzzy timeline, because I know you can't be real specific, you don't know where this is all going to go. But what might the board expect in August, or if it becomes September? You know, what kind of report would they perhaps be receiving?
I'm going to tell you what I've been used to, but this is something that I may need Gina as a resource. So Gina, I may need you to step up to the mic. I'm going to tell you what I'm used to. It would be looking at all the objectives that are stated and kind of redefining from our standpoint what that objective means to us, how we can provide evidence to a board on what this looks like, how often we could report out on it. We had charts for everything. With our Baldrige process, we would have charts. And we would say, okay, we're gonna report out on this in this month, we're gonna report out on this in this month. We had surveys that filled in information at different times of the year. It was a plan.
So,
And
you
so,
would be bringing a
different
plan
thing, yeah.
under each goal.
Right.
To say this is how we intend to go about the work, and board, if you see anything wrong with this, you better tell us now.
Well,
kind of
what's
thing.
your feedback on this based upon the process that we've gone through? Do you want to add anything to that, Gina? Because I haven't gone through this with ECRA, I'm just
And
referencing
while Gina's
Baldrige.
walking up there, can I ask this, because then maybe she can answer it too. So would we expect in August to see what you feel probably are the priorities and the things that are going to get started right away in terms of objectives, or would we not be quite that far yet?
I'm using August as kind of and I'm getting nervous, because I
I did
don't
say
know,
fuzzy timeline.
a lot's going to depend on when we can get ECRA hired and get this going. But the soonest we can get this to you, yes, we would say, we believe that these should be our priorities, and this is why we believe we should be working on this. What do you think about that? That might be something. I know I had a board member who, I remember intently, he really wanted in a large district to know why staff members were leaving. So we kept retention rates and then had exit surveys. And that's something he didn't want to wait 2 years on. There was something in the community, and he wanted that information now. But it was a very give and take. I'd call it a working group. Some people call it retreats. But you really sit down and you talk it through, everybody that's going to be involved on the teams, the administrators and the board, and it provides teamsmanship too, because it really is everyone coming into really bringing the strategic plan into our very heart and soul, for lack of a better term.
So depending on when you get started, and you have your teams in place, what we've done in the past is actually gone completely through phase 3 in 2 to 3 months, and that is with an initial plan. So you start off with some, if we're facilitating it, we start off with some training, some guidance around what, believe it or not, a lot of people get in there and it's difficult to tease apart. Is this a tactic? Is this an action? Is this a metric? Is it measurable? So there's some training involved in that. And then there's monitoring to make sure. So initially the groups would meet together. If you have 4 goals or 5 goals, you have those 4 or 5 teams in the same room. And it can be a half a day or an all day. But your job is, as you said, you're going to be the one ultimately responsible to travel across all those goal teams. But within 2 or 3 months, you should have our goal and what best practices and what we facilitate in the past. You get through that, and then you present to the board, here's phase 3. Here's what the administrative team has done. Here's our outline for it. And then you start implementing and moving forward after you address the questions and tweak as the board requires or requests. But then the key is that it has to be fluid, it has to be flexible, because a lot of things you're planning for the 3rd year out. So there's some prediction involved that there's assumptions made that things will remain the same, and when we know that they're not going to be, because they never are, right? You're always...
They never are, and I think that part is so important. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we were told that something was changing with state testing, so we put in a metric that was supposed to have happened, and it never occurred. And so after the first year, I remember sitting down as a group saying, this never occurred, we can't wait on the state, and so we changed the metric to something we knew how to handle. So, but they were group discussions, and I think for me that was a very rich experience for both the administrators and the board, because I think the administrative team got a better understanding of what the board was looking for, and the board got a better understanding of what actually we can measure and what we can't. And so
Right.
I think using an ECRA-type company helps us also determine good metrics. Because I can go out for every single one of these objectives and send an email to all the superintendents and say, how many of you collect exit surveys? And get those all in. But by the time I go through all that and do all that, that all takes time. Because not everybody answers their emails as
Right.
fast as I do.
And we can tell you that today, because we
Right.
see it across many districts. That's the...
And that's the
one of
helpful part.
benefits. Yeah, right.
Because I really feel that all of these board members have worked so hard on hearing from the community and working through and getting this going. I don't want to hold it up anymore. We've got to move forward with that, so.
I will comment that since you have that Baldridge background, it's going to be very smooth for you. There's some really good, philosophically, that whole model is very helpful, because as you know, in strategic planning.
Yes. Well, and I
So-
sent the board members this week the Baldridge plan. I'd be curious to know if any of you took the time to read the 52 pages.
Yeah.
Not all
There you go.
52, but I was really impressed with the level of detail, and in particular, the change in the numbers as you went across the years, and how just identifying those specific areas allowed you to focus and to improve on those numbers. It was really impressive.
It's exciting, too. It really is truly exciting.
And-
Leanne pulled the, and I'm having a mind blank on what we called it, but the scorecard. She pulled the scorecard, and that was something that could easily be done in our district and posted every year, and changed as the metrics change on it. It just, I think a community gets so used to that reporting out. And we had category champions, which in this district would be goal champions or goal leaders. And I was category 5 goal leader, and so I learned a lot about how to look at things and determine metrics and all that. So it will be beneficial, but I think I've never done this as a superintendent. I did it myself in my former district. So to go through all the different goals with different members on it, I think is going to be challenging and fun.
And to Mark's point about, I think it was Mark, talked about the board goals, and then Leanne mentioned it's got to go down to the principal goals. That's a little bit more difficult than when you just say it, to really do it. How do you really align that? And Rising Star, I heard, we can help you with that. We have districts that have integrated that beautifully, and Barrington is actually one, where we didn't do their strategic plan, but, we can let you speak to someone there in Barrington. That would be a tremendous resource for you. They have they have everything. They've got their DIP, their SIP, they have their ECRA growth model, they have their strategic plan beautifully integrated. But it's tricky to do. It's a lot of work, because you're trying to pull in all these elements that you're accountable for.
Then they take that and they do a great job on their communication, because that's who Leanne and I heard
Did you hear him speak?
talk.
Okay. Jeff.
And I think that is such a key piece.
You're right.
It's not, we're going to do all these exciting things, and it's going to help us align all of our activities to get results we want. But I think the bigger piece is then we communicate that, and we give consistent communication, so everybody knows all the time. Well, if you want to know how the district's doing, take a look at the website. It's all in the scorecard, or whatever we're going to choose to report out on.
And it just makes your whole decision framework very easy to understand. So when you have an administrator or a teacher or community member or board member come to you with an idea, you reflect back to this document that is very grounded in, stakeholders and research to say, that's a great idea. It's not aligned in this current plan. We can park it, we can look at integrating it, but it's very easy to make those decisions. You have a plan, you have a framework for your decision making, and you have your timeline and your resources allocated. But
that's another key piece that plays into this. After this is all done, you can really take a good look every year around budget season, what goals are coming up in the next year, and make sure your resources then are aligned to your board goals.
So I think the key in terms of a timeline would be to identify when you want to get started with the teams, and if ECRA is facilitating it, we'd say give yourselves a 2-month window. You're going to have a kickoff where we would give some guidance and instruction. We'll spend half a day or a day with you and all the teams. Then everybody will go their own way, and they'll work independently on their goals. They'll come back together. At that point, before we start really solidifying, there should be a presentation to the board where at least one spokesperson or leader from each goal area would present what they're looking at and the objectives, get feedback, go back, and then usually 3 meetings, 4 meetings. It's a lot of work, though. I mean, it's a lot of work. But that's what you should anticipate.
I remember that, too.
And then you go, when you all look at that and say, okay, that makes sense, I can see that, and you can see everything's tight, and you go. It doesn't mean there's not going to be changes along the way, but it's enough to get you moving, and the first year is going to be the most critical and the most solidly, based and planned. Years 2 and 3, those further out years, are the ones that you're more likely to see change based on some of the external, the environmental factors that you can't control all the time.
So I think that helps answer some of the questions on phase 3.
Okay.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Okay, so, goal 1, I think our job here is to decide, do we feel like we've got the objectives that, at least for this moment, are the kickoff objectives? That we're gonna leave?
We don't need to rank those. Are they ranked now, and do we need to rank them?
No.
That's the next
Remember,
phase.
that's the prioritization that'll happen as the phase 3 folks get a part of it. So am I correct, Gina, this is a list in no particular order? Shall I read through them?
No.
No.
We like that you're able to read, and you do a good job.
I read it at least the 6th grade level. I think I'm doing a pretty good job.
You are doing a good job.
I just think maybe it would be helpful for those who are watching at home to hear them. So, under strategic goal 1, maximize the academic achievement and personal growth of each student. By that we mean by supporting high academic standards and differentiated instruction, students can and will succeed. The objectives that we currently have are, number 1, monitor, assess, and improve individual student growth. 2, hold students to the highest academic standards. 3, identify and place students appropriately in challenging courses, programs, and interventions. 4, encourage each student to meet his or her highest potential by focusing on individual learning needs. 5, equip students with 21st century learning skills and we have decided to make sure those are defined, what we mean by 21st century learning skills. Number 6, refine and continue the district's emphasis on students' social and emotional development. Number 7, offer and encourage a broad range of educational experiences. Comments, additions?
I got a question. On number 3, identify and place students appropriately in challenging courses, programs, and interventions. Do we need the word identify? Does that add something to it? Or do we
Yeah,
just,
it really does, because,
we identifying the interventions? Is that what that means?
well, I think sometimes it's identifying the correct student for the correct intervention, challenge issue, whatever. It really, the word identify is a key word in that particular
Identifying
sentence.
Students.
Individual students'
You're identifying
needs,
students,
not
correct.
Their needs. This student needs
Okay.
X, this student needs Y.
You know, Mark, it gets back to the individualized learning for each child.
I agree with what you're saying. That's not what I read when I read it. I'm wondering if it's communicating that. Identify students and place them appropriately? Would that be?
That's about what it is, right?
Yeah, but that's not what it's, I don't know.
That's what it means.
It's me, maybe.
Identify needs, isn't it? It's not really the students. And it is an extra action step to make the effort to identify the needs, right? So I think we need the term identify. I understand which word does it, what are we identifying, the need or the student or the plan? Is somewhat ambiguous
But
there.
I guess it's all the above.
It is.
Well, and it's also better, it's better defined when we bring an action plan to you, because I think you see it all laid out then.
I raised this the last time we talked about it because to me, this is the question people have about differentiated instruction. And I know when I raised this before, I think someone said, well, that term's used so much, it's maybe not useful to have it in there. But from a communication standpoint, I'm bringing it up again because I think it's been raised so many times that.
Are you talking about the word differentiation?
Yeah.
But now, wait a minute, just let's be clear. We have two different things here. We've got 3 and 4. 4 is to encourage each student to meet his or her highest potential by focusing on individual learning needs. It seems to me 3 is designed to do something different.
Yeah, the student is 3.
It's all about students.
Okay, so number 4, the idea there is individualized learning, correct? It's encourage each student to meet his or her potential by focusing on individual learning needs.
Well, and I would also share that relates back to 1, because when you're monitoring individual student growth, you're monitoring the differentiation for students' instruction also. So it really ties into, they all kind of overlap, is what I'm saying.
We have differentiated instruction in the sub-goal or the descriptor. I think that's where we ended up adding it. It's right up there at the.
Because it applies to all of them then.
Because it does apply to all of them. I think we made that addition perhaps in light of those comments.
But is that synonymous with individual learning needs?
Well, I think we said that that was a good way to word it. And thank you for pointing that out. I overlooked that. I don't know if that was a new change from the last document, but what I'm saying is if people are going to pick this up and look at it to see what we're up to, and because it's been an issue that people have talked about so much, I just want it to be communicated clearly on here. So I guess if it's up in the top.
It sort of pervades.
It pervades the whole, all the objectives.
Yeah, okay.
And I do remember, now that you bring that up, Susan, I do think you all had a conversation on that the last time and felt it was so important and needed to be up and in the blue.
In the blue.
So what I meant to say was, I think it's great that that's up there. And I think everything else is
Follows
in
from
great
that.
shape.
And once we get it bolded, we'll be finished? Is that?
And if we can just hold it so that a little bigger font.
Right, a bigger font. Could you increase that font for us?
Distracted people like me see.
Leanne, that was almost done smoothly.
I'm gonna make good use of your time tonight.
Okay, so are we good with where we sit right now with strategic goal 1 and its objectives? All right. Strategic goal number 2, optimize teaching and learning, the teaching and learning environment By that, we mean through a robust, challenging curriculum and high-quality teachers, instruction, and facilities, the district can best support student achievement and development. So number 1 was pretty much about students, and this one is kind of about teachers, or instruction.
And the environment.
And the environment.
The environment.
Okay, so the objectives we currently have are number 1, align the curriculum and instruction vertically and horizontally in accordance with the Common Core, and we're going to define what those two terms mean, alignment vertically and
3 and 4
horizontally.
are.
Correct. Support successful student transitions to high school. Number 3, develop and document clear guides for teaching within the curriculum. Number 4, make use of assessment data to improve the quality of instruction. 5, provide employees with relevant professional development opportunities. Number 6, recruit, retain, and recognize high-performing faculty and personnel.
And that is so nice that we have that in there, because that's what I suggested.
Right, exactly. And
That's what I meant to say.
Aren't we going to talk a little bit more about that one, perhaps?
Well, it's in there, and it's almost word for word what's in the Baldrige, which is what I sent you, so you guys can discuss it, but I'm just,
Tickled pink.
I'm tickled
pink.
because I am.
And again, that is the objective that will be expounded upon as we make action plans and metrics, so, okay. Number 7, create equitable accountability systems district-wide that drive higher student achievement and improved educational outcomes for all students. I know, but I did well.
That's a word smithing about evaluations, isn't it?
Well, it's about all accountability systems. It's
Including
evaluation, but that's only a small piece.
Teacher evaluation is what you mean, correct, under that one?
Principal evaluation, superintendent evaluation, director of finance and operations evaluation. I'm seeing it, because I'm getting you ready for goal 3.
Number 8, systematically integrate technology in classroom instruction. And number 9, create emotionally and physically safe, healthy, sustainable, and high-quality learning spaces.
Well, I felt like we got a lot of feedback from community members on this one, and some of it was conflicting, so I just wanted to say that.
Right.
It was, but when I looked through, because again, we all kind of had all the emails lined up at the last meeting, and then I went back and double-checked. We had covered everything that had been emailed to us in one way or another.
Well, there were some people that were requesting that we organize the information differently, and I don't know.
And some of it might go in
awkward
another.
because all of these things lead back to student achievement ultimately, but so I think they're organized.
Again, they're not ranked though.
Right.
Because that's something that will come back to you and talk about where we see as priorities, and we'll have a discussion with the board on that.
And I do want to make one point. In one of the emails that we received, there was a question about what does number 9 mean? Is that about buildings? Is it about other things? If it's about a building, why isn't it under another goal? I think we talked about some of these objectives could fit under one or more goals, and there may be times when there's overlap between what a team and another team is working on, and there will be interaction between those. So I think we even talked about, weren't there a couple of objectives, Gina, that could have been here or there? And didn't we move a couple? So
21st century learning one was
Yes.
one example.
So just to clarify, we may have chosen to put an objective under a certain goal that someone else may have put somewhere else. The important thing is we have the objective.
Right.
And
Because then it will be covered.
So for a safe and sustainable, high-quality learning space, obviously that would contribute to kids' learning, but as a goal, you could argue it would be under financial responsibility, but I really feel like it's fine. I mean, as long as we understand that's where it's headed and one of them can take it
And
on.
we're talking about a teaching and learning environment. It's important for also teachers to feel safe and to feel like they've got a healthy environment and an effective classroom environment to
Right
teach their kids.
resources to support that classroom.
Right.
So here's one thing I noticed about number 7. It's really the only one that we identify what we're trying to achieve with these objectives. And I think, Mary Jane, you just said, really, aren't we all trying, through all of these objectives, to drive higher student achievement and improve educational outcomes? I wonder if that's superfluous in number 7, because it's, or is that saying something about our accountability systems that's unique to that particular objective?
I think it's unique to that objective.
Okay.
Because inherent, just like Terry had brought up teacher evaluation, principal evaluation, any other, we've got to handle the state accountability, we've got all these accountability measures. And in meeting those accountability measures, we can drive higher student achievement and then improve the outcomes for students. So it's really aligning all of our accountability systems to meet the strategic goal as well as meet the mission, vision, and guiding principles.
But you could tag that, you could put that exact line.
On
at
all
the-
of them,
At the
right?
end of every one of these.
Or something very similar to that.
It's also in blue though, so.
It is in the blue. I'm just wondering if it needs to be there or if it somehow improves our,
I would, the only thing I'm gonna say with that, as someone that is gonna need to be looking at the implementation stage, it's easy for me to talk about how evaluation of principals and teachers is gonna align to student achievement. It's gonna be a lot more fuzzy for me, and I'm gonna be on the phone with Gina a lot more if I'm trying to figure out how to measure a facility and how it's measured as safe and healthy, and how that's gonna tie in with student achievement. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but to me, it makes more sense being under the learning environment, so that we can align the action plans to that. Because see, we have to look at all these and say, okay,
how do you do it?
how are we gonna do this? Which, when we get to board goal 3.
I'm
we're
fine
gonna
with
talk about.
it being there. We don't need to edit it at this late date, but it strikes me that we could make commentary on all of them that would be similar.
And maybe that is one that'll morph as you
But it
start.
it is interesting, is you can have lots of different reasons for having an accountability system, right? It could be to give, in corporate America, different raises to different people. That could be your purpose, right? But what our purpose in our accountability system here is to drive student achievement, and that does give a flavor to why are we bothering, right? So I'm now talking myself.
You talked yourself right back where you need to be.
I was, right where I need to be. Good.
I love when that happens.
To do that.
So are we okay with strategic goal number 2 and the objectives we currently have? All right. Moving on to strategic goal number 3, ensure long-time fiscal stability.
Long-term.
What did I say, long-term?
Time.
Long time? Oh, long time and long-term. Fiscal stability. And our descriptor is fiscal responsibility sustains high academic quality and student growth. Okay? Are we okay with that as a goal and a descriptor? Okay. Currently, our objectives are, number 1, prioritize the allocation of district resources in alignment with the strategic goals. 2, address community concerns in financial management. And I think we've had some comments about that one, and I think we want to talk more about that. Let's get through all of them, then go back to number 2 at least. Number 3, evaluate programs for effectiveness based on return on investment and intended outcomes. 4, address safety, space concerns, and land use in district facilities planning. Number 5, establish metrics to monitor district financial health. 6, focus on the execution of prioritized initiatives. 7, develop a long-term, comprehensive, and prioritized plan to guide spending. Okay.
So going back, and I'm going to make a statement, then I'm going to turn it over to Jane as the new strategic goal number 3 champion. I think both of us have concerns on number 2, because what does that mean? Because community concerns are kind of across the board, so we might need better definition to what exactly that objective means.
To me, I looked at that today and I thought we should probably just even take that out. I mean, we want it because we're going to address the communication that people have about it in the communication goal. And I think a lot of the concerns that have been raised have been about specifically the communication and is the information transparent. And then questions about, reserve, balances and, what intentions we have on spending money on facilities, that stuff's going to be addressed in other objectives.
Right.
Well, and actually, Leanne, I agree with you 100%, except for instead of taking it out, I would like to change it and make it 2 separate goals, or 2 separate objectives. One being, and we're already in process, and been talking about this forever, which is the decide what a minimum and maximum fund balance should be in terms of board policy. And the other I think you talked about is communication. It isn't really financial management that we're talking about here. It's things being easy for the community to decipher in terms of what our financial status is. So I think this, instead of what's here, becomes an issue of the maximum and minimum reserves, and a second one, different one, which is communication in a really user-friendly way.
So those are addressed. So the monitoring metrics thing is 5. And under 7, where we have the long-term comprehensive prioritized plan, if you look at the footnote, that covers the minimum maximum. Now, if you want to take it out of the footnote and say, listen, I just want an 8 that says that, because that's what we talked about last time, and somehow it's ended up in a footnote. I think primarily just because we said, well, the team will put that in place if it's really, when they get to that. So I think we just wanted to make sure that the team recognized, just to your point, that ultimately there probably should be a policy for minimum maximum. Whether or not we make it an 8 or just make sure it's focused on.
What would be number 2 if we take number 2 out?
Well, whatever. I'm just saying, another goal.
I think given the amount of time that the board and the community has spent on that, I feel that it should be a stated objective myself.
That's what I brought up last time.
I agree.
So.
You got it in
Other
footnote,
thoughts?
we're moving it up.
Number 2?
Not only have we had a fair amount of discussion about it, but I think informally, board members have made commitments to working toward that goal, even though the board may not have voted on what that policy should be, or even voted that we will have a policy. We've certainly individually, probably most of us, said we think that that's where we're going with this. To me, it seems somewhat disingenuous not to include something specific.
So are you guys?
So I would agree that we ought to have something
So I think it
specific.
should say something to establish a board policy setting minimum, maximum reserve balances.
Just like in footnote 6.
Well, that's a lot of words in there. But if you
All
wanna
right,
make
let me,
sure-
I'm gonna type then, so hold on, I'm getting on my computer right now. Okay, establish.
Mark, did you have comments?
Establish a board policy.
I just wanted to, I do have a comment too about, if we, that one of the ideas, I don't know if we're doing that, of taking out item number 2. And I want to.
People are saying, no, leave it.
Okay.
Oh, saying leave number 2?
Didn't you change it?
No.
Oh,
Oh, I meant
I'm
put
hearing
something
just
else in
change
its
it.
place, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I would like this not there, but
Well, my thought on that is to be careful because of the point we addressed in the way we interpret perception and survey data in the last meeting, and the way we addressed and changed the wording on the curriculum in today's meeting, in that we don't do something that minimizes community concern for the way one group of people thinks that the way we handle our finances as opposed to another group. I think we need to say something about, we identify and will consider community concerns in financial management, something that gives credit to their concerns as being, what's the right word? It may or may not be valid, but we're willing to listen and.
Is
then
that
perhaps we need to have the
communication?
communication one also stated specifically.
Perhaps, that it just, that we do recognize that there are different ways of thinking about things, and we'll listen to alternatives.
Well, or that we will provide information in a different way that may be more useful to them for their comprehension, perhaps.
But not just, I think what you're saying, Mark, and what I agree with, is it's not just providing the information, but it is making sure mechanisms are in place to listen to the community and hear those concerns. How the board acts upon them is.
So that's under goal 4.
Yeah, and I do think it's number 4, but.
Right, it's actually,
I mean, I assume the group that works on this is going to pull out any concerns that have come in over the last year and any that come in subsequently and get to work on resolving those. And to me, this statement in number 2 seems a little redundant, because I think we're going to get to that anyway through the other places, but I'm also fine with leaving it if it makes anybody feel more confident that we're going to get those done.
Well, I think that it was pointed out before, Mark, that by you, that there's a perception of poor curriculum development in the district by some members of the community respondents, and so that's,
So we don't
taking
need
those
to-
concerns into account is something that we don't articulate in the in goal number 1. I think that my philosophy here is that we we incorporate all of these sort of community collaboration communication mechanisms in Goal 4, which is really designed to, identify ways in which we can engage the community about every other aspect of the plan, all of the other strategic goals. I think that putting it in one particular niche objective in one of the other strategic goals minimizes the extent to which that it's important that we engage the community in all the other goals as well. I think it's really something that we should keep in 4, probably not have it in Goal 3 for that reason.
I could see, like we've had this discussion with many others, they can fit in a lot of different goals. My concern is that we don't feel like we're fixing perceptions so much as recognizing different opinions as valid.
And I think we do a good job of that in 4.
So let's go, what I have down in my notes, which I'm going to be typing, goal number 3, take out number 2 objective, and I've got establish a board policy. Establish a board policy that sets minimum and maximum fund balances, including mechanisms to bring.
Funds.
That's the word, funds.
Balances.
Balances.
Back in range.
Back in range.
Something like that.
Establish a board policy that sets minimum and maximum fund balances, including mechanisms to bring balances back in range.
So the thought being is that you have minimum and maximum, but sometimes you may go in and out of those ranges, but you want to have a rational approach to get them back in without having a knee-jerk reaction type of thing. So you want to have somebody go through that thought process. How do you bring this thing back in if it's over or under, and how do you get it to where you want it to be? And I think whoever works on this is going to have to come up with a rational thing that, does it take, what actions need to be taken? I think the board would have to approve those actions.
Terry, you want to head that committee after your next year?
You won't have much to do.
Oh, as long as you put Hal on it with me.
You'll have your Tuesday nights free. So.
Yeah, we do on Wednesdays instead?
Yeah, I think that is important, though, and I think that is one of the things that not only the board, but the community would like to see is, I think even now, as we talk about a maximum balance, people are wondering, well, how are you going to get to that? How are you going to spend down to that spot? And I think that it's important for us to have a plan.
And I think it's also important to articulate that there's a rationale for a fund balance, that takes into account, and that's perhaps why we need to keep a footnote below here. And facility needs, curriculum needs, technology staff, all that stuff is wrapped into the rationale behind a fund balance. And the fund balance is derived in part of the policies, derived in part by evaluating all of our future needs in all those areas. So I think it's important to keep that language in there in the footnote as we bring up the minimum maximum fund balance into the objective itself.
So what strikes me is about having an objective that is specifically on the fund balance is it is very easy for somebody to write that policy in 2 sentences, right? And quite another thing for us to write it in a manner that achieves the other objectives, right? So we have to have that long-term strategic plan, number 7, before we are able to write the policy. I mean, that's why we haven't written the policy yesterday, right?
Exactly. Very good point.
So I don't want the team to get together and say, oh, this is one we can do. Here, let's set a balance. Right, got that one done. Because I think we have to do 7. The whole goal could be 7, really. We need that long-term strategic plan to guide spending and the levy, really. I mean, it's not just the spending, but the revenues that we need to be.
But the fund balance policy needs to be determined prior to us doing that too.
Does it? Because, for example, if we wanted to take an approach to the reserves that included slowly building up the fund balance so that we could fund a school, which might, or fund, let's say, a roof replacement or something major, which I don't know that we're doing, but you would want to know that in advance of setting the fund balance policy.
True,
right?
but you may also have
Goes hand in hand, though.
When you go in this process of thinking through it, you're going to have to draw a line on what is going to be funded through the balances versus referendum too.
Right.
I mean, major expenditures really should be through a referendum.
Through the referendum, right, I understand.
So the team has to go through all that thought process. And I'm not arguing that they're not integral. I agree, you shouldn't set one without knowing the other.
Right.
You gotta sort of do them together.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
my
you
point.
do.
That's my
You-
point.
You do.
No, but Susan does raise the point that this group may decide that for general rainy day fund balance that encompasses these things that we might use this for, we might decide on top of that, we're saving for that inevitable $500,000 roof. I don't know what it is. And so each year into that fund balance, we're also going to put, so there needs to be some flexibility in the fund balance.
But I think the point is you communicate it.
Right.
First you decide what you want it, then you communicate it, and you just be completely transparent about it.
Right, no, exactly.
Well, that gets to your issue, when it gets out of range, there may be a very valid reason for it getting out of range. That
And you may find that you can say, well, next year, we'll come back in range because we're not going to spend as much. That improvement's done, now we make ourselves whole again. So that's what, it's just got to be logical. You just don't want people to say, okay, you're out of range, cut everything in that calendar year. It may not be the smartest thing to do. You may, but especially if you recover the subsequent year. So you just want people to be thinking up through it.
You know, it's interesting to me that this appears as an objective and thinking about how that process works, because in all of these items, I think we're coming down to talking about things that are going to be implemented by the staff, whereas in this particular case, this is going to involve a board policy. So it feels a little awkward to pass that off to somebody else to then come back. I mean, really, it comes down to this is the board's work. So I don't know if it's typical for an objective to be achieved by the board itself, or if always the objectives are referred to others. And I'm not opposed to having, we've got some financial experts in the community, people that I'm not opposed to having people have input, but since it comes down to a policy, it might be kind of a setup to refer it out to a group, and then it comes, when it's truly, the responsibility falls back on the board.
Gina, would you maybe be able to help us with that? Thank you.
I'm so glad you came. Mr. Blackmore, you have a full day tomorrow, so if you need to get home so you can get to the middle school early, you can do that.
Yeah.
So you know.
So the way it's been reworded now, I actually agree with Leanne that it really belongs at a different level. But that doesn't mean it can't remain part of that goal, and Jean would be responsible for that. So it's documented there.
I'm responsible for bringing it to you.
To the board.
Recommendations.
So perhaps, yeah, the objective really is to make a recommendation perhaps, or a general recommendation about it, because you're right, if it's going to be if someone's going to hand it to us and then the board decide, well, we aren't really going to have the
Right.
policy be that's going to not work.
Right, and that has evolved. That objective was not originally written that way, and I can tell you from the research that came from specific feedback and focus groups and the surveys, very specific around the fund balance. So, and then throughout a couple of sessions here, it evolved into let's set the minimum, maximum, and that's
And we
where it
do
is.
need, that is an objective, right? We won't be done with the strategic plan unless and until we.
So
get
really
that
what you're
policy in
doing is
place.
you're saying, Jean, with the turnover in the board and the moving forward on the strategic plan, you're in charge of bringing this back to us, probably with a recommendation so you can talk about it and adopt a new board policy. That's basically what you're saying.
So
Recommendation or a recommendation for a process to get
Right.
there.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, maybe the process to get there.
Yeah, and developing some of the rationale, identifying the various factors.
So that's a more inductive, if you think of it. If it stays in the goal where it is and it moves to implementation in phase 3, and you get input now from the bottom up, ultimately whose name gets assigned to that goal is Jean's. She will be accountable for that, and then how does that get done? She works with the board.
That's
to
kind of a setup
identify
too,
that.
though.
Pardon me?
That's kind of a setup too, though.
Will she be responsible for bringing it to the board and
And
actually
then if the board
defining that?
misbehaves and doesn't do its job, I don't want it to fall back on.
But part of Jean's job as superintendent is to make recommendations to the board about policy.
And,
So, I mean-
and that's how it would be, that's how it should be written. When you get to that point, Jean's gonna own it, and what's that gonna look like? You set a timeline, and what is the definition of that tactic or that action is specifically that.
We're talking
Jean
about
will
it
work-
at the August
She could
board meeting.
convene, in theory, in theory, the superintendent could then convene whoever she feels she needs to come to a recommendation and bring that, okay.
Yeah, that's talking about it at the August board
And I
meeting.
think it's important to keep it as a separate objective after this
Yeah.
discussion, because, you know, you can do a long-range plan and still not have a minimum maximum
Right,
policy.
right, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
we
the
believe we need
feedback
both.
from the research was very specific.
Yeah.
The original intent of that objective was to capture very, very specific input from
We don't want to
stakeholders.
minimize it by any means. And just speaking to the order of things, I mean, there's a reason why we haven't just passed one, right? It's been dependent on the findings and the decision-making that goes into the strategic plan. And so I guess it's the timing more so, or perhaps the order, I don't know. Maybe the long-range plan that's in number 7 needs to go toward the top.
But remember, these are in no particular
I know, but it sort of seems like.
That's such a big.
It's such a big one. What's that?
Confidence you won't forget that.
I won't, all right.
Even if it's on the bottom of that.
All right, you can remind me if I don't.
Well, I wondered about number 7, you bring it up, because I looked at number 7 and I kept thinking, that is such a huge thing. And then I kept saying, could we fold in some of these things and develop a long-term comprehensive plan to guide spending that includes, number 1, that prioritizes the allocation of district resources in alignment with strategic goals. That includes
Yeah.
evaluating programs for effectiveness. That includes establishing metrics. It's such a giant encompassing umbrella goal. Does it make sense to have that in there as a, or is that a lead-off that says that needs to include all these sub-things?
I see what you're saying, but to me, it's a little bit, it's distinct, because I think it's gonna involve, you know, having experts talk to us about how we're gonna handle the bonds in the long
A lot of
run.
little things that need to be woven in there.
You
yeah.
know,
Right.
one thing that I noticed is that we don't have in here that we want a comprehensive facility and asset plan.
Number 4, isn't that what that is?
Well, maybe.
That's how I read
Yeah,
that
that's how I
one.
read
Okay.
number 4.
I just, hopefully that, there's no room for that to be misinterpreted, because I think number 7 hinges on that. You know, knowing where we're headed with our facilities, number 1, and then we can come up with a plan for how we spend or manage the money within the fund
They
balance.
all go together. Yeah, you got to leaf them together to make the
But
final
I would
product.
hate to see this happen without a more comprehensive facility plan than we have.
Maybe
If you
number.
feel like in the implementation, Gene, that's not gonna get lost, then I'm fine with the way it's worded. I just wanna make sure that is in here.
Maybe number 4 can be worded just more directly, because I actually changed that to read, develop a district facilities plan that addresses safety, space concerns, and land use. Just a little more assertive. Just says it right up front.
Yeah, I
More
like
consistent
that.
with 7.
Again, though, we run the risk when you put those 3 things in that we've left something else, so we may need to
Or just say
add
develop a
those
district
and-
facilities plan,
Well, that includes at least,
at minimum, or.
You might want to put a time frame on that too. You don't need a 50-year plan. You don't certainly need it, you know.
Oh, I
That's,
see.
that's part of the long-term
I
comprehensive
know, that's
plan.
why they're sort of,
It's all in number 7. I do like the wording, though, because address concerns implies that the first thing they need to do is figure out what the concerns are. I think the first thing, or one of the things they need to do is, what's our vision for what the school district
so
needs.
we're saying, Mark, read it again, develop a
I've got it.
district.
Develop a district facilities plan that addresses at least
That
safety.
includes at
That
least.
addresses but is not
Including,
limited
yeah.
to.
That includes at least.
That addresses but is not limited to.
Yeah, that's good.
Meaning there probably really are other things out there that need to be addressed.
Safety, space concerns, and land use.
I like it.
Is it here somewhere, and I've missed it, this, the staffing plan that, Jean, you've just taken us through for the first year, this year?
it's in footnote 6.
It's in footnote 6. Okay.
Covers all the thing, class
Because
sizes.
staffing plan, making sure that schedules make sense, making sure that we have the right number of specials teachers and, distributed the workload correctly is really part of an efficient running of a school district, right? And what we're saying here is we want to maximize the educational benefit and minimize the cost of producing that maximum educational benefit, right? if staffing is covered, that's fine, but it struck me what you were saying about the staffing plan was pretty fundamental.
And I see that addressed in a couple different, I see that in several different objectives.
Maybe number 2?
We'll be covered in 2.
Recruit, retain, recognize.
Yeah, that's the big one, that's where I
Plan for
reported.
staffing, perhaps add
That's
to
where I reported everything, and staffing and Baldridge planning.
It does go to financial, efficient running of the school district, goes to the financial stability.
So we'll rearrange this footnote a little bit down here, taking out the fund balance stuff, but we'll keep the rest, right?
What I have down, and I want to make sure, in goal number 3, take out the number 2 objective and put in instead, establish a board policy that sets minimum and maximum fund balances, including mechanisms to bring balances back in range, and then in parentheses, facility needs technology, etc., just like in the old footnote at the bottom.
Just
We're
leave
gonna
those,
copy.
leave those parentheses in the footnote.
Okay.
It'll get clogged up if it's in the.
Then,
That's really the footnote for 7 anyway.
develop a facilities plan, so this is
Number
objective
4.
number what now?
4.
Objective number 4 needs to be reworded to develop a district facilities plan that addresses but is not limited to safety, space concerns, and land use.
Okay, simple.
Got it.
Okay, and then 7 will remain worded as it is.
Yep.
Correct? But then its footnote, which is number 6, when writing the implementation plan for this objective, oh no, what page were we on?
20.
20?
Just eliminate the references to the minimum, maximum fund
Yeah,
balance.
so we take out minimum, maximum fund balance, but the rest stays.
Right,
So that's footnote 6.
right, just modify to take out the redundancy.
Got it.
Okay, strategic goal number 3, finished?
So,
Yeah.
Good. Mark?
Can we
Now?
double check with Jane too, because,
Let's.
all right.
Are you good? All right.
Jane.
Darn, I was watching Terry and I thought I was, but I forgot to watch Jane. Sorry about that, Jane. So we're good with 3?
Yep.
Okay, number 4. Strategic goal number 4 is to engage all stakeholders through effective communication and collaboration. The description to enhance that is, enhanced community relationships and partnerships foster cohesion and enrich students' learning experiences. I like that.
I just thought I'd add, just as a little footnote, while we've been sitting here, Mrs. Crawl's Project Citizen has now made the front page of Gazebo News. So that's a perfect example of community relationships and partnerships and how it enriches their learning experiences. So check into Gazebo, because it just went on tonight.
Fantastic.
Okay. We're okay then with the goal and the descriptor? Okay, so here are the objectives. Number 1, develop and support strategies that foster open communication for both internal and external stakeholders. 2, regularly collect and report stakeholder input for continuous improvement. 3, provide relevant, targeted, and transparent information to the community. 4, foster collaborative relationships to reinforce a sense of community and enhance student learning. 5, develop learning opportunities beyond the classroom. And 6, maximize communication technology.
What does number 6 mean?
It's use, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, anything that, can enable to ensure that people get the communication.
Is it
Maybe Facebook, maybe down the road.
Maybe it stays in
Maximize
paper.
and enhance. I don't want to wordsmith too much here, but, there are already resources that are there that can be enhanced. In addition to expanding into new media, we have for example, we can continue to evolve the website to become more of a communication tool.
I think maybe why this isn't clear, I don't think we're trying to maximize the technology itself. I think we're trying to maximize our effectiveness
Our use of,
by reaching people through various
whatever it takes, or the most efficient means.
outlets.
Good point.
Or through
How do you measure
available
that?
technology. How do you measure that?
Wait,
Well,
again,
see,
Leanne, say
how
again?
many tweets went out? Are we on Facebook? Did we, I don't know.
Wait,
I don't
Leanne,
know how
say
many
though-
complaints
Say
we.
what you said, though, the objective you thought it was, say it again.
Maximize our effectiveness or communication
Oh,
effectiveness
maximize communication effectiveness through
use of available.
Appropriate technology.
Available appropriate technology.
And then the first step in there, when Jean asked, how do you measure that? You don't measure that. You have to identify the actions that will be measured to accomplish that.
Maximize communication effectiveness through use of available.
Technology.
Technologies.
I know this really isn't the subject of tonight's
Available
discussion,
sources.
but what a way, I'm just asking this. So-
Don't talk to me about
so-
Twitter.
So, no, I'm saying, so might we survey our community about how we're doing communicating, and then a year later survey them again to see, have we met your needs in communication, what would be a better way? Is that
Yes.
a way you might do that?
We're actually gonna do that
and
this
see how many
year.
people answer.
You ask what you use. Are you
Facebook
using Facebook to get information? Are you using Twitter? Are you using, emails? What's your source of,
We wanted to do that, and we made an executive decision, we're not gonna do it till the end of the school year, because our parents are surveyed out between the community survey and our strategic planning survey and the 5 Essentials survey. That will be a survey, we're starting that already this year.
Okay.
Check.
And you have some baseline data as to what
Yeah.
mode of communication most people rely on, so you have something to start with.
I hope it doesn't come out Facebook, but if I have to do it, I will.
Come out
Well, we had a,
quantity of different communications. I mean, you're gonna have a
Exactly.
mix
We had
based
a-
on different people's needs, somewhat
Exactly.
generational, but not exclusively generational.
Exactly,
we had a good contact with your colleague from Northbrook.
yeah.
If we, Facebook is it, he's using it effectively, and, I mean, he gave examples of events at their schools where they had over 1,000 hits, where people learned about a student that had achieved, and then another thing where there was an entertainer that was coming to the school, so, could be good.
How about number 1, develop and support strategies that foster open communication for both internal and external stakeholders? Why not just say for all stakeholders? Just make it simple. Why do we try to define them? What if we miss somebody? What if there's something beyond internal or external?
I know what,
That is.
That's third
On the
dimension?
fence, people on the fence, people who don't know if they're.
The agnostic ones.
I like, and Mark, when you look at strategic plans, you're usually gonna see internal and external.
Okay.
Because when we report to you, we should be reporting internal and external.
Okay. Distinction.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
I like the distinction now because it just puts an emphasis that you can't forget the
Right.
external.
Because just like, it's important that we communicate with our stakeholders, it's equally important for me to be communicating with the staff.
It's real easy to forget one side or another and think you've done the job.
Okay, so are we okay with strategic goals and objectives? All 4 of them?
With the one change.
Right.
Number 6, maximize communication effectiveness through use of available technology.
Technologies.
Oh, I do have technologies, I just read it wrong.
Okay.
I do have that.
Just checking.
To be
You are
consistent
correct.
throughout the document.
I just read it wrong.
Anything else for number 4? I think then,
So can we just take one moment just for everybody's edification? When you form these teams down the road, it sounded like the first 2 teams are going to be primarily staff administrators, if I'm wrong.
Terry, I think I would
I think it's just important that
prefer,
people understand how these teams made, because I think there's been a lot of comments made that there's a lot of people in the community who want to be participating. I think you got to make it very clear where they're going to be able to participate, and if they can't be on a team, why they wouldn't be on a team.
I think I have to wait till the next board comes in, though, to provide some guidance on that. The one thing that I'm kind of clung to, because I've seen it happen in my own planning, is that I don't feel comfortable with large committees. it's better that you have a small committee that can get a lot of things done with representatives. And actually, everybody that will be on these teams, I've already asked them to start brainstorming what parents could we involve, what community members, but I really think a lot is going to depend on, as we move into phase 3, who the next board would like to see involved in different things, because I've had many people express interest already. So I really, it's going to be hard. Every single committee we could use people on. And I'll have my champions or the leaders of those committees. But then there's a lot of work that needs to be done on all these.
I think that's
So
why you have to have criteria. So
I've got your number first on my list because I heard you're going to be open on Tuesday nights.
I'm going to be planted in front of my TV watching these events. You know, it's just like any other TV series I have.
So
an
I
interest in.
I don't mean to shrug off your question. I just think that we've already started brainstorming. My priority would be to keep a manageable number.
No, I agree, I understand it, but what I thought I've heard from you, and that's what I want you to clarify, and you did, is that it isn't going to be an exclusive group of administrators or teachers
No.
doing one or two, that, you know, you're very open-minded to having other members of the community involved.
Absolutely.
With, again, a manageable number of people,
Right.
whatever that is, okay?
So, one question overall. Where do we deal with efficient use of staff resources and class size?
Class size is under staffing.
Where?
It's under recruit and retain quality staff. That would all be encompassed in that.
I think it's goal 2, right?
It's mostly goal 2.
Right, but
It's all goes
it's
in.
certainly been an issue, not maybe as prevalent as the reserve issue, but that question of efficient assignment of teachers to classes throughout the day or to grade level class sizes, classes at middle school, et cetera, has certainly been a touch point that maybe needs to be identified specifically here.
I would feel very uncomfortable with that because, and I'm just sharing, and you can take it for what it's worth. It fits under both teaching and learning and students. And I think that as the strategic plan, as we actually get in and look at our indicators, we may need to, just like this year, we're changing the middle school schedule. I think that we need to kind of really get into the plan, and all of that's going to change. So that will constantly be addressed under teaching and learning, and what we're teaching and how we're teaching it, you know, the use of our specialists, all of that. And I think our class size, that we're getting back into kind of policy, kind of crossing many different lines, and I think that that is something that you kind of work through in determining what you're teaching. I'm going to give a for instance. If we have a really great class of challenge math at 7th grade, let's just use that as an example. And by the time we do the schedules and it's down to 2 or 3 kids in the class, the question is, we're meeting our strategic goal, but do we want to put limits on how many number of kids we want to put in a classroom? So they're all natural fallouts of our teaching and learning and our student achievement goals. So these are normal things that are going to be addressed through the board calendar. I don't know if you want to put it in a strategic plan. That would be something.
Well, you wouldn't want to put the numbers in the strategic plan. Like, I don't think we want a committee deciding whether 21 is the right number, or 23 is the right number. But something you said a few weeks ago about the scheduling of teachers through the day seems to me so fundamental. And I just don't want to lose track of that.
Susan, don't forget this one. Remember in strategic goal number 3, long-term fiscal stability, when we talk about the long-term comprehensive prioritized guide to spending, underneath that included is staff. And I think really we have to leave it open enough to let Jean work with the staffing plan she's got. But I agree with what you're saying is I don't think we want it so specific here, but we do want it dealt with and in people's minds in the plan.
The big cost to the district is labor, right? That's
Right.
our big spend each year.
Salary and benefits.
Right? And so to relegate it to a single word here, and I know it's addressed lots of different places.
Right.
But it just seems like this clear, comprehensive staffing plan that's developed well in advance of the end of the fiscal year, each year, which we've come to expect from you. But
That's a
maybe-
superintendent expectation, but I think what I hear you saying is, it's so important, should we be addressing it in our strategic plan?
And acknowledge it again. I think we've just heard about it. It's one of those concerns that we've heard about, probably heard about it in the focus groups, much like we heard about the reserve policy. I don't want to go about setting a number in the strategic plan, but a process for developing what the number ought to be.
And that's gonna change yearly based upon what our parameters are.
Well, but
I think that's
the
what
process.
And
The
it
process. I
goes
mean,
to a board responsibility in terms of hiring, the plan that we made, the collective bargaining agreement.
How
So
many free periods does somebody have? Is going to be you, but how do we determine the process by which we oversee that, right? Whether we need 0.6 of a specials teacher, or we need 0.8 of a specials teacher because the schedule falls out in the following way. I know from you that you're focused on that.
Yeah, that's a superintendent responsibility.
But as a board, how do we ensure that that happens? And
Good question.
Well, I sort of looked at this, and maybe this is not the way it's going to work, but I think it could work, is that if you look at strategic 2, that goal, that team, whatever it is and how it survives over a long period of time, really should be making those recommendations, right? And it has to be the input to that long-term facility, or long-term financial plan, because I don't think anybody working on the long-term financial plan just take the numbers out of the air and say, this is what it is. They really should be taking input, and then, based on that input, it comes down to prioritization of affordability, right? So if.
it does, it's covered in one.
So they want to have class sizes of 18, let's say, that
Right.
requires 5 more teachers, and if there's good rationale, and it brings it to the board. But then, like, people working on the long-term plan said, we can't afford it, so we have to go back to drawing board. So there should be a give and take and an intersection of those committees to make that happen. But I don't think the people on the financial side can do anything in a vacuum. Their inputs have to come from various things, and we know that, right?
And it's stated that in the
this
footnote.
group. The requisite staffing, class sizes and stuff has to come from the people who are charged with optimizing that learning environment.
So let me give you a scenario, and then
Because I
maybe
suppose
this
if
will
you had a
help.
blank check, you'd just hire everybody you wanted.
This
Somebody
will
wanted, but you don't
help.
have one.
This will help clarify, I think, where your question is, and I think it's exactly what Terry's saying, only it's an example. Let's say that we bring you the metrics to, the Surgeon General in the state of Illinois is saying all kids should have yoga, because if they don't have yoga, they're not gonna have student achievement. Well, we all know that the reason we're sitting here is because of student achievement. That's why we're here. It's not to have buildings or spend money or do anything. We're here for student achievement. So if our goal is going to be to have yoga, in goal number 1, we're going to be looking at how that impacts student achievement. In goal number 2, we're going to be looking at staffing and saying, well, if we're going to have yoga, we're going to need to either extend the day, we're going to need to hire more yoga teachers, we're going to need to get more teachers certified in yoga.
Or at least some yoga teachers.
And
We'll
we'll
just
have,
see how this shows up in the patch tomorrow.
I know. This example is sort of losing me. I may be able to resolve my concern about this with strategic goal 3, number 1, prioritize the allocation of district resources.
That's another one.
Really what I'm talking about, right? Running a school district efficiently requires us to make choices between competing needs, right? And I just think this budget item is so significant that calling it out may matter, but just for the record, I'd like everybody on goal 3 to recognize that prioritizing the allocation of resources really does go to how do we allocate how many specials teachers we have in the middle school.
I just wonder if
efficiently.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
I looked at you before because I wonder, I'm sure this has come up in other districts, and if you have any ideas
Right.
of how that gets worded or woven in.
Right. The objective, the key here is that the objective needs to be broad enough to have layers beneath it. And so what you're referring to would become the actions beneath it, one of
Okay.
many. That objective should have several. specific actions.
Okay.
But I think what I'm trying to talk about is it's going to
Allocate the
overlap in all
resources.
goals.
I don't know what number it was.
It is, okay.
Every single goal, it's
I
going to
think the
overlap.
discipline we need to bring to the strategic plan is for financial, well, for financial reasons, we really need to have the level of discipline that we've talked about recently. And that's, we need a good staffing plan also to bring quality education, but fundamentally, we're hired to figure out how to allocate scarce resources.
So that
And maximize student achievement.
Yes, right, in order to maximize.
First
student-
actually is student achievement. I mean, that's what schools are mandated to do, is
That's
to
what I'm
teach
trying to,
students.
yeah.
Now, we have to allocate the resources to do that, but our job is education.
With fiscal responsibility. So I think, depending on if you want to add something, an objective on this or not, I would also expect you to have some of that in your metrics and your layers.
It's fine, if it's in number one.
I still like my yoga example though, because it goes across all levels.
So I
But if it's that specific about class size and allocating, say, to address class size, that is micro, to where
Yeah, I'm
it's an
talking about
action item
a
underneath an objective.
staffing plan, a yearly staffing plan supported by data behind the staffing plan.
But don't we have the yearly staffing plan on the board calendar now?
Yes, yes.
So that we know it at the very least, it's gonna get reported and discussed. And that doesn't cover what you're probably also referring to in terms of, how you decide. But I don't know how I don't know how you delegate that off to a committee either.
You don't, what you delegate is accountability,
But Susan, will you feel more comfortable when the actions are placed under these objectives? I mean, those will also become a matter of public record. Once they're here, they all get.
What struck me was the absence of the reference in light of the recent discussions about the staffing plan that we've had. It just, that concept is in a footnote, but I appreciate that this is big picture. We don't need to drill down. I don't want to lose sight of how important efficient allocation of resources are to the financial picture. I guess, and that's why it's number one. So I'm done.
Other comments?
So what do you want to do with that?
It's a number one. If everyone feels like it's covered.
To me, it also falls in the financial, it'll get looked in financial or long-term fiscal stability. Number one, that's what you were saying.
Number one, part of
Okay.
the three.
I didn't know if you meant goal number one.
No,
or
goal number three, item number one, allocation of human resources, essentially, is what I'm talking about.
And you understand when you're giving workout or whatever, that this is a concern to, right?
It's on my normal everyday. I see that as a superintendent responsibility. So I don't even see that as part of the strategic plan. That's just part of my everyday operations.
I mean, I think, I'd say, I agree with you, but I think it goes beyond the calendar year. For the next year's budget, I think it has to be a longer range plan about staffing requirements and so forth.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to play into your collective bargaining agreements, it can play in a lot of
That goes
different
into
things.
the comprehensive plan,
just
though.
saying,
I'm in total agreement with you.
And some of this will be driven too, like when we're looking at the data that we have about where kids are achieving, and we've done this before, where we saw there was an area where the achievement wasn't matching up to what was expected, like aligning the staffing with that.
True.
That's another good example I was thinking about.
It is a good example of how we allocate resources, right?
Well, and it's partially covered in recruit, retain, and recognize high-performing faculty and personnel, because if we aren't getting an efficient instruction out of one of our resources, then we need to replace that with some, with a resource or a staff member that is more efficient, or
Professional development, additional staff, moving staff around to do other jobs. It's all in allocating the resources and the comprehensive plan, because I think what you're saying is all covered in the overlap.
It is.
Other comments? Good over here? Leanne?
Good.
Susan, anything else?
Nope. Before you get ready to vote, I want to read through what I have in my
We
notes.
have a motion before that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have to find an agenda before we can do anything.
We want
Okay.
to ask for community comments.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, we do. Do we have any community comments regarding our strategic plan? We've gotten a thumbs up from the audience.
Single member
The
of the
audience has
audience.
communicated its enthusiasm for the plan. I think that's terrific.
Okay? Do we have any board final comments regarding the strategic plan? I would make a comment that this has been an incredible process, and I'm really proud of the work we're doing, and we're nowhere near finished, I understand, but I think that we have undertaken a really important task, and I think we've done a pretty good job. I think we've asked the community to participate. I think they have willingly up front and throughout this phase two, and we very much appreciate, I think, all their inputs. I think that we have thoughtfully considered them and tried to consider every input we've gotten in a thorough way. I would also like to thank everybody sitting here for the amount of dedication that everybody has given and the amount of time and effort and thought to make this process a really good one and to provide our community and our district with something that's really important that will guide us for the future, and that's something that will be a living document.
Yeah,
So.
and MJ, I would add to that, the community input doesn't end here. It is written into the plan itself, that it is ongoing, and I think that's incredibly significant in what we've done.
Great, thank you, Al. Other comments? Anything, Mark? You looked thoughtful.
I think you all,
You always
you should all be very proud. I think your communication has been very rich, and it's helped me kind of visualize to the next phase, so.
Okay.
Just getting back to the agenda. Okay, so with that, I'm going to move on to action, if everybody's ready.
Ready?
Okay. Our first item of action is personnel recommendations. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the personnel recommendations as per the attachment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and hang on, I'm just getting to what those recommendations are. Okay. So the personnel recommendations are 2 leave of absences for maternity and a resignation by 1 staff member. Okay? Okay, so do we have a motion?
Yes.
Al? Okay, and a sec, oh,
They already,
we have, okay, who do we have?
Terry moved and
Pardon me?
Eric second.
We have to vote.
Any other discussion? Okay, Al, can we have a roll call?
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo,
Yes.
Eric Wagoner,
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Terry Carney,
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes. Okay. Next is approval of the strategic plan. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the strategic plan for Lake Bluff School District 65?
So moved.
As amended tonight, right?
As amended tonight with all my notes, if you would like me to read through them.
No,
Okay.
I wouldn't. I mean,
I already emailed them to
I
Gina,
got
so.
Leanne moved. Who seconded it over there?
yeah, I did. No.
Got it.
And what we're, just to clarify, we're approving that we've done the mission, vision, guiding principles, and the goals.
Strategic goals.
Strategic goals, and some drafting of objectives, right?
And the guidelines for the objectives.
Great, thank you, Mark. Other comments or questions? Okay, Al, shall we?
Yes. Terry Carney,
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Eric Wagoner,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes. Okay, approval of contract with School Leader Solutions. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the contract with School Leader Solutions to employ Joanne Trahanis to provide curriculum and instruction for the 2013-14 school year?
Second.
Discussion? Anything, Jean?
No, we look forward to Joanne being here to lead us in a third year of curriculum review, curriculum implementation, and curriculum change.
Anything else?
And possibly to guide our,
And to really guide our new person in the curriculum area. Thank you for adding that. I appreciate that.
Anything else? Gal?
Leanne Charlot?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady?
Yes.
Terry Carney?
yes?
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Eric Wagner?
Yes.
Okay. Approval of contract for managed IT services with Single Path. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the contract for managed IT services with Single Path as discussed at the March 12th, 2013 board meeting?
So move.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
I would just say that I thought it looked really comprehensive in terms of the approach and the services. Hopefully knowing a little bit about the business. I was impressed with all the various areas that they're able to cover. So I felt good about it.
I think the other clarification, just, we sort of exchanged emails on this, and I think everybody read the email, but just for sake of being redundant, what we're approving is a 24/7 monitoring and maintenance of our network and so forth. But they also made recommendations on the things that we can improve with our infrastructure and the like. And I know Jane is working internally to ensure that those things are addressed. But those will be incremental things
Right.
over and above this contract, just so that you understand that.
So what do you understand the 10 hours per month to be, if not to making some of those improvements?
Well-
So I understand that there's some things that'll be over and above, but 10 hours per month of this technology planning would be some improvement, I would think, right? 21st century classroom integration, that would be,
Meeting with us, meeting with staff, talking to us about what they're finding in the monitoring.
I think there will be numerous adjustments, improvements, tweaks that can be made with the existing equipment, that
Under
need to be
this-
made with the existing equipment, aside from any new pieces. As I read the report and read what they can do, there are a lot of things that we could be doing just to improve throughput, improve the security of the network, improve usage overall, that are not new pieces of hardware, but humans configuring the equipment better, monitoring, spreading the load, those kinds of things that
To Susan's question, so I
have not
think,
had done for us in quite a while. We haven't had the kind of person. giving it
I
the
think
kind
as
of
all
person.
these items on the recommendation list are costed out. I think that's a legitimate question to ask, is why can't that be done in the normal course of things? But clearly, incremental expenditures like new hardware would be a separate,
Right.
different thing. But I
Absolutely.
think that question has to be always addressed when you have these service level agreements like this,
Right.
because you do have an allocation of resource throughout a month. And, you know, they're going to just sort of lay it out when Jane sits down with them. I'm sure it won't cover everything, but I'm sure some of it could get covered, to your point.
I can give you one example. Steve Miller, a maintenance supervisor, uses a plethora of technology pieces. I think it's very inefficient, but my technological knowledge is like this. I need them to come in, work with Steve, work with Train for automated controls and that, so we can kind of streamline what Steve does, so he's not walking around with 8 phones and an iPad and everything, a laptop, everything else he's doing now. We need to figure it out. And the way the network and everything that is, has been set up for Steve, he's having to jump through hoops and hoops and hoops to get to go to see what the temperature is in this classroom. We need them to come in and help us figure out, let's get him streamlined so he's efficient and effective. That's going to be like one priority when they come on board. That's just one example.
And that's a great example, because I think we can all understand the inefficiencies there
Yes.
and how much improvement we could get. So do you think that that's covered in technology planning under the virtual CIO services, 10 hours per month? It says technology planning, short-term and long-term?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And so it strikes me that maybe in the first couple of months, they might be spending more than 10 hours. And I want to be clear that we're getting their services to complete the technology planning. And I think that it's 10 hours a month. And if it goes to 11 hours, we're not paying additional. I mean, I talked to.
Well, it could be in July.
Yeah.
We might use them 2 hours.
Right.
In August, 2 hours. In October, we might need them for 15.
Okay.
So we're not limited to just only 10 hours each month. It's really very flexible.
And that's what he said when he was here the last time. And I'm tempted to say that we should modify this to say an average of 10 hours a month, and then part of me says maybe that'll come back to bite us. I don't know. The language right now says 10 hours per month. We have his representation on tape. So as to what the language means, so maybe we'll leave well enough alone. But
I have great trust in
and we have it
Bill
on tape.
Spikowski. Yeah. If that were the case, I mean, I hold all control by not writing them a check to pay them. And that's the case with many of our service providers. So if it's that, and I also have the ability to contact every school district in the state of Illinois to,
there is that. Okay.
ruin their reputation. If I thought that, we wouldn't be recommending them.
I understand.
To work with the districts. So I'm very confident in what they've presented to us.
Jane, I appreciated your example, and I know Steve needs a lot of, the services, the analysis you're describing, and Steve's a great guy. I get even more excited at how they say they will be able to plug in and meet with the educators and the integration of the technology, meeting with Joanne into the classroom.
Right.
And I don't know if there's anything more you can say about that. I don't know specifically what their track record is there, what they've done in the past, but to me, that's where this begins.
They have a great track record.
I like
in
Steve,
the
but it
area
gets more
for that.
exciting when we're talking.
I know. Well, and he's already kind of thrown out, some ideas just in general to Joanne and the tech team we were talking, because we have their one-on-one laptop initiative. How long are we going to continue that? Because as technologies evolve, are we going to do that endlessly? No. We need to take a look at how we're using them and how we're going to use them in the future, and maybe we need to look at other types of technologies to put in the hands of students. They can kind of help us along that way with their expertise in conjunction with what our curriculum needs are in the classroom.
And we also had an evaluation of technology about a year ago that Ben commissioned.
Yeah.
With the guy who's doing the web.
Bill Chapin?
Bill. Yeah. So has that or will that information be handed over?
We've given them
okay.
everything.
Okay.
And part of their proposal for the 10 hours a month was done after they did their assessment of our technology too. So they really know what our infrastructure is and what our needs are. So this was really kind of based on what we think we will really need for this coming year, if that is helpful.
I was surprised when I looked at this that I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't see timeframes for responses. I mentioned that to you. I just typically kind of have seen in the past that if somebody's going to be responsible for providing emergency responses, that they have some obligation. And I understand that you've gotten really good references on them, but I just want to make that comment again. It concerns me because I see that things happen at inconvenient times, and he's not located locally.
Well,
so.
Bill isn't going to be the guy that comes out to fix something. I can tell you that. I can tell you that they're available to us 24/7, but we've done so much work in the last year. Stuff does happen, but we have been able to kind of correct a lot of things, like our email. I think we're good on email now. That was a disaster for a while, but we've fixed that. Yeah, knock on wood. Those kinds of things. We've got the new phone system in place. We've got UPS backups on those. So those have been our two primary issues in recent couple of years, and we've addressed those.
Jane, didn't he also, because that's a good question now that I'm processing when he was here, a lot of what they can do now is remote fix. Sure. So I think, his comment was with the 24/7 monitoring, they sometimes know problems before we even do.
True, right.
and can notify us that it's gonna be fixed from somewhere else. And having been in other districts with the 24/7, it's usually just seamless because they can predict when a problem's gonna go. And through that prioritization that he was talking about, they can actually reroute things before the issues actually impact our system.
So if the website crashes, you would expect that they would get resolved very quickly and you're not concerned about.
I don't know about website crashes, but if our website crashes, that's really a Sharp school.
Right, that's not him.
So he wouldn't have anything to do with that?
That's our.
Okay.
Our provider.
Well, okay, so maybe that's a bad example. Phones then? VoIP, right?
Well, that's going to be our phone vendor, our brand new phone vendor, Sound Inc. That's who we would call for that issue.
Okay.
They're more in infrastructure and that board goal 3, the comprehensive plan, when we start talking about that, they're here to bring us up to speed with that. They're very into integrating technology with curriculum, so these monthly meetings on what are we seeing, it tends to be slow at 9 in the morning. Setting up either, maybe we need another router somewhere. Sometimes the things that create the most havoc can be fixed with a couple easy things like extending bandwidth, et cetera.
Which we are going to be doing shortly.
It's making better use of what we already have and then helping us better plan for the future.
So one thing that they promise in here under the highlights and features is software patch management. So I don't know what our experience with that has been, but that's oftentimes a difficult problem in corporations, right? Where the vendor will come out with iteration 4.2.2 on something and it gets rolled out. Well, Al, you could speak to this. It gets rolled out in the middle of the day and crashes everybody's
Never happens.
computer. Never happens. Never happened in my company, as you can tell, right? So they're managing that and that will be taken off our responsibility to optimize the system usage when the patch comes out.
You would need to be talking to one of our technology team members at this point in time.
Okay, and to Leanne, your question, they do promise real-time remediation. I don't know, it's in bullet number 2. Our team will be notified immediately of any potential problems prompting real-time remediation. And then they go on to say, saving you countless hours of frustration and lost productivity. I'd like to see that guaranteed. Me not having frustration would be worth a lot.
I don't think anybody's going to.
I'm sure they got a price in their house too.
Yeah, they help. Because if they could get my computer back on, I know that would help my frustration. So it does go to the speediness of the response that they're promising, though I don't.
I do think Leanne makes a valid point that a lot of agreements like this do have a response time expectation spelled out, which, other than answering the phone call in 60 minutes, I'm not finding anything else there. Maybe they don't offer it. Maybe we're willing to, maybe we feel like.
We haven't had a guarantee with Revere Group either, but I can tell you that when we called them, it's.
I mean, everything in me says that that's not going to be a problem, but a lot of these agreements do have something like that.
And again, if our experience is such that they fall flat, we'll deal with it at that time, and we'll fire them. I'm confident in.
Well, you said to us before, it's an upgrade from where we were.
It's a major.
Which was an upgrade from where we were.
Stance and they're not just there to put out a fire, and we're in, and even stated, we're in really good shape. I know things do happen and we hope nothing major does, but they are going to be more proactive as we plan for future needs, both in infrastructure and classrooms.
Right.
So we're not just always behind the 8 ball, which is kind of what we feel we have been.
We intentionally moved Lori over into more of the education teaching side. We haven't had anyone doing the proactive oversight, to my knowledge.
We fix things day to day.
Yeah, it's all been response to problems and fix it.
And this will be more proactive.
Yep.
If it's not, we don't want it.
So I guess the question on the table is, do we want to go back to them and say, we'd like in this contract to have some assurances of real-time response or responses within the business day, or, something that quantifies that?
I would just offer, I thought his representation of what they were going to do for us was pretty straightforward, and I can't imagine he would want to put his reputation on the line. He wants to build more school connections. I think that we need to presume, given what our administrators have done in terms of background checking on this, that he's going to do what he said he's going to do. I don't know what more we could do. I guess we can ask him to rewrite the contract, but are we feeling that this is not a contract that we can agree to? Is the question, I think. Right? Susan, that's what I'm asking you. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think as long as we know what we're getting, right, which is we're getting 12 months. And we aren't able to cancel before 30 days notice until next year, right? So as long as we're going into this with our eyes open, we know that. We also know that they come highly recommended, and that there are many ways outside the U.S. legal system that Jane can ensure their performance.
I can never guarantee anybody's performance.
But she's got a lot of contacts, and these folks do a lot of business with.
And as you pointed out, there is legal remedy should we need it.
What I'm suggesting is that the legal remedies here aren't as strong as they might be, but I'm also suggesting that maybe an overabundance of caution. That's what lawyers do.
Okay. Are there other comments? Any other questions? Okay.
I would ask Jane to just maybe forward the concern of the board around the responsiveness time, so they're aware of it.
Oh, trust me, I will.
Well, I think the simple question is, give me a contract for your commercial customers. I mean, if it should be, why would the one for the school board be different, or a school district be different than a commercial, Abbott Laboratories up the street type of thing? I mean, companies have negotiated these things left and right with these companies over a millennium, so if they're, equal, then you're okay. But
So then I'm repeating the question. I mean, do you not feel comfortable voting on the contract?
I raised this earlier in one of my emails, and I just said, we are stuck for a year, and I said, what happens if they poorly perform? And it was the confidence thing. We have confidence in them. So, I'm not, I agree with Susan. There's a little bit of, hope, and I'm not saying, I think everything I read, to Elle's point, I'm very encouraged by everything, but just from a pure legal, cover yourself. If they fail and you don't agree with them, what's your recourse for the first year? Nothing, but you pay them for the full year and you move on, the way the contract's written. Now, they may not honor it that way. They may say, don't worry about it, we'll fix it and all that kind of stuff, or I guess we don't agree, let's just end now or whatever. Who knows? But I'm just saying, pure contract, it doesn't give you any performance indicators. And if they do underperform to your expectations, you can't do anything until after the first year.
You'll have to resort to Jane's alternative incentives. Really?
Bigger stick. That's all I'm saying.
It's the same thing with your transportation contract with our gas provider. I mean, you sign a multi-year contract with them as well. I can't guarantee performance. We're pretty sure they will, but I mean, any of these service providers can ultimately just fail.
Sure. Right. But you don't have to keep paying them.
Exactly.
But this way, the way contract's written, you probably would.
So is there a reason, let me just ask this question, is there a reason why we wouldn't have this 30-day written notice clause already in the first year of the contract? I mean, we get it after the second year, but they've said the first year of the contract, it's a year contract, right? We're bound. Have we asked? Do we care to have a 30-day or even 60-day during the year, the contract? Do they care?
If I were them, I want at least a year's contract. And most of the service providers that we do business with is the same. If you want to go on a month-to-month contract with them, I'm sure we can, but I don't think it'll be at $5,135
It'll be a lot more expensive.
Well, we get that after the first year, but do we have is the 5,100 for the entire 39 months?
It was with the original contract.
For the entire 39 months?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're raising questions based on reading a document that we have to vote up or down, and
Right.
you have the benefit of, industry contact and references or whatever else you did to check them out. So I take your word for that. I could support it, but those are, questions that come up for us just reading it. So.
Other questions? Al, we have roll call?
Terry Carney.
Did you say my name, Al?
Terry Carney.
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Leanne Charlot.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes. Okay. Approval of the resolution to reduce one FTE district certified staff for the 2013-14 school year. Could I?
FTE is full-time equivalent?
Yes. FTE, full-time equivalency.
Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the resolution to reduce one full-time equivalency district certified staff for the 2013-14 school year?
So moved. Second.
Discussion?
Matches up with our staffing plan,
Staffing
right?
plan that we've been talking about over the last several months. Any comments or questions? Al, could we have roll call?
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Charlot.
Yes.
Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Terry Carney.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes. F, approval of resolution for a reduction in staffing hours for part-time district certified staff for 2013-14. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the resolution for a reduction in staffing hours for part-time district certified staff for the 2013-2014 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Again, as we've been discussing over the last several months, part of our staffing plan.
Right.
Just some changes in enrollment have necessitated the change in some of the sections of some of our specials, is that correct?
As well as the
Math
change
curriculum.
in the middle school schedule.
Questions, comments? Al, can we have roll call?
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Terry Carney.
Yes.
Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Leanne Charlot.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes.
Okay, this is approval of board action regarding Rising Star. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the local board action report / assurances Rising Star Continuous Improvement Plan that certifies to the Illinois State Board of Education that all assurances and information provided in the plan are true and that the improvement plan is approved by the Board of Education?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I was hoping that Jean or somebody could give a little background on this, just illustrative for the community.
What this is when a school does not meet AYP, they have to go on a school improvement plan mandated by the state, telling how you're going to address the deficiencies. The state last year, and really the course of this year, we fell right in the deadline for this. Instead of a school improvement plan, it's the Rising Star system. Very complicated, very tedious as far as activities, but ultimately getting to a good point. So Joanna spent a lot of time this year figuring out how to get into the Rising Star, how to do your documentation. The school improvement meetings now that will be held at buildings need to be documented with agendas on what you're talking about during those meetings. And the Rising Star system, then, we have to implement our plans to the state, and the state has to approve those. So, as per school code, when you have a school improvement plan, the board has to approve that. Next year, as I've stated before, we'll have school improvement teams at both schools, and then a district overall plan. You're not gonna see a whole lot of difference in that because we're so small and we have one of each school. But you're going to see a lot more structure and hear a lot more about Rising Star in the future, in alignment with our strategic plan. Board goals 1 and 2.
Anything else? Great. Al?
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes.
Terry Carney.
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Okay. Bid for floor tile replacement at Lake Bluff Middle School. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the bid from Libertyville Tile for floor tile replacement at Lake Bluff Middle School in the amount of $47,860? Second? Questions, discussion?
Was that your second, Jay?
It was mine.
Okay.
Just a reminder that last year we approved a bid for asbestos abatement for floor tile, actually, for the mastic at the middle school, and it was to cover a 2-year period. So that work will be completed prior to the installation of the new floor tile, which you are approving this bid this evening. We did receive only 2 bids. Both of these companies have worked in the district in the past. We would have been happy with either one of them, but we are especially happy with Libertyville Tile's cost.
Anything else?
Is there any reason why only 2 of the companies?
I don't know.
Are they all that busy?
We had 5 firms pick up bid packets, and just these 2, and these both are local.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Anything else? Al?
Leanne Charlotte.
Yes.
Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Terry Carney.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda. Every month, the board can choose to place items that are either recurring, such as the approval of previous minutes, annual responsibilities, such as the appointment of a school treasurer for the next year, or items of a regulatory nature that must by law be approved by the board. These items can be combined into one motion and passed together as part of a consent agenda. The board regularly screens its consent agenda each month and removes motions from that in the board's judgment might otherwise require discussion or public comment. This evening, the items on the consent agenda are regular meeting minutes for March 5th, 2013, closed session meeting minutes for February 12th, 2013, closed session meeting minutes for March 5th, 2013, destruction of closed session tapes for August 9th, 2011, the P-card report, bills payable, the treasurer's report, and activity reports. Could I have a motion that the board approve the items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Al, can we have roll call?
Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes.
Terry Carney.
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes.
Thank you. Okay. And last, we have information, the library grant program.
Both of those items are in your packet, just for your information.
Okay. And 2012, 2013 recognition certificates.
Just normal recognition of schools that occurs every year.
Great. Any new business? Any old business?
16-item list I'd like to share.
Some things you just want to make sure we've been working on? Just checking off a couple? Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
I emailed you my notes.
I'll update it and send it back to you tomorrow.
And then, I gotta remember, your secretary already emailed me on our